Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei died fighting Trihexa and got reincarnated in Konosuba movie. Before we start, please go support reytheorix for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistaken character's gender, but of course Issei is a male. What can I say? I was bored and I thought what would happen if instead of our protagonist Kazuma, it was Issei who was transported to Konosuba. Well, here is the result. During the war against the beast of the apocalypse, the Trihexa, in a last attempt to stop such a monster Issei, decides to sacrifice himself in order to stop 666 in a last attack, which would take not only all his power, but his vital force, thus giving the Alliance the opportunity to seal the beast for all eternity. But this would bring fatal consequences for the soul of the chestnut. Due to such an act, no paradise of any mythology could accept his soul, therefore this heroic soul with a destiny to disappear will be saved by a somewhat much rare goddess when reincarnating the chestnut in a new world where friendship and the supernatural are an everyday thing. What will become of the chestnut and his old harem and the new one? Let's accompany Hyoudou Issei in this new adventure in which his main concern will be money. Prologue. Meeting the useless goddess and new life. Death. It was the most accurate word for the scene that could be seen wherever you looked, and the culprit of all this was a demon, the leader of the Chaos Brigade, the super demon, son of the original Lucifer, Lucifer, a super demon who was watching his act with a glass in his hand while smiling in a crazy way. Well, this despicable man was the one who freed 666 or Trihexa from the seal of the biblical god, with the purpose of extinguishing the biblical factions and the Alliance in general, but for what purpose? Well, it's simple. What Rizabun wants is the position as absolute ruler of the underworld. Of course, this was not possible until he gave up on two plagues in his path. The Sekiryuutei Hyoudou Issei, bearer of the Welesh dragon, one of the two celestial dragons, and in turn the first and perhaps only bearer of the power of four very high-ranking dragons in which they are found. Albion, the dragon of supremacy and rival of Drake. This power was taken by Issei in his first encounter against Lucifer, grandson of Rizabun. Drake, the dragon of domination, this is his sacred gear from birth and therefore his own power. Office Ouroboros, the dragon goddess of infinity. This power, together with Great Red, the dragon god of dreams, was given to Issei when he received a new body after losing the previous one because of Samuel's blood, and thanks to this new body is that Issei can perform great feats such as accessing a form of boosted gear never before thought of called the Diabolos god dragon. And the other plague of Rizabun was his grandson Lucifer, bearer of Albion, the celestial dragon of supremacy, and Drake's rival that added to his power of birth by the Lucifer blood on his father's side, made him one of the best bearers of the white dragon, and already in the final battle, you could see only one of the two standing against the beast of the apocalypse, that because Vali is being treated for a very mortal wound courtesy of his grandfather, now Issei addresses the beast with his most powerful armor, the Diabolos armor. Issei. Trihexa, this ends here and now. I myself will make sure to end your existence no matter what happens, was what the brown-haired boy shouted to the beast of the apocalypse. That was because both the boy and the dragon knew that this was an all or nothing, a single attack in which to bet everything or lose everything. For the black dragon, it was to return to the seal in which they condemned him, and for Issei, it was that everyone would die, both soldiers and innocents. That is why this was a true clash between two more than peculiar existences. On one hand there is the Chimera dragon that brought God to death, that monster that would lead everyone to extinction, that was the Trihexa. And on the other hand there is the rarest dragon bearer of all, not only for his growth and power achieved, but for his goals and objectives to become stronger, which are outside of everything you would expect from a bearer of the celestial dragon of domination, the first and perhaps only one, who did not get carried away by his own power, in other words, the kindest and most noble Sekiryuutei of all time. Greg. Partner, are you sure of this? Remember that it is 666 that led the bearded man to death, and the old man was not weak. Do you think you can fight this? We can still escape. Was what the dragon sealed inside Issei said, who was more than worried about his bearer and friend. Issei. But what are you saying, Drake? If we don't end this here, and now that beast will continue killing right and left, we can't just run away. Besides, it would only be a matter of time before it comes for us, so at least we have the opportunity to send it back to the seal, and I won't waste it. So are you with me, partner? The Raiga, you are surely the strangest carrier I have ever had in my entire existence as a sacred gear, that's for sure, but it is as you say, if we don't end this here, he will kill us later, so. Issei. It's time. The Ragon of a last. Issei. Effort so. The Raig is a list. Issei Drake. Partner and friend Hyoudou Issei Drake Gotch. Issei Drake. If we have to go forever, let it be big. Let's do it Diabolo Infinite Blaster. Drake Boost X Indefinido. And in the same way the beast loaded all its power into its snout with the purpose of ending the fight once and for all, so this would be all or nothing and so on. Trihexa Issei Grayfia Infinite, Blaster. And so the two attacks collided. At first they were equal, but as the seconds passed Issei's attack gained more and more ground thanks to the fact that he used the power of the Sword Dragon Slayer Ascalon, whose energy was very toxic for the Chimera Dragon, and that added to the fact that Issei, seeing that the attack was gradually losing power, he decided. Issei drag transfer my life energy to the attack, transfer all my life now. Drag. Are you crazy? That will kill you, buddy. That is suicide. Reconsider. Issei. If I don't do it anyway, Trihexa's attack will kill me. Game over. Understand, this is all or nothing. There is no place to hold back. It is like this and only like this. Drag, do it please. Drag. Partner, okay, I'll do it. I'll transfer all your vital energy to the attack. Are you ready? Partner, no. Are you ready? Hyoudou. Issei. Issei, yes I am. Do it now. Drag. Drag. Vital transfer, and with that action Issei's attack gained the final power to defeat Trihexa, which no matter what he did, could not match the power of the Sekiryuutei's attack, which with each second was getting closer and closer. But how was it possible for the most powerful dragon to lose simply in that attack? Was everything contrary to its existence? In other words, in that attack was hope, friendship, truth, will, and above all, was the enormous love that Hyoudou Issei had for his girls. Each and every one of them, and so on. Believe me when I tell you that this is the best thing I could come up with regarding the attack. The Trihexa lost the clash, which ended up very damaged and weakened after the attack, and seeing that the beast was very weak, the alliance leaders ordered it to be sealed, but this time forever. Of course, Issei was lying on the ground already breathing his last breath of air, because he used all his vital energy in that attack. In other words, he offered his life in order to finish off the monster and save all the factions. Issei. Dr. Dry G, said the brown-haired man, clearly more dead than alive and very weakened. Greg. Here I am, buddy, here I am. Don't try too hard, you feel terrible, but I think you'll survive if you ask the Nakamtas for help, said the Welsh dragon, with the intention of motivating his partner, but the harsh reality was another very bitter one. Issei. And no lie, drag has to yo identify cowg a person dies. Don't give me dis hopes Oz both you, and I know that this is my end, and don't deny it, said Issei with a voice that was getting quieter and quieter, because the vital energy that was left would barely keep him conscious for a minute at most, while his body faded into particles of light. Brag co-partner sniff. I'm sorry, it's just that I don't know what to do. I don't want you to die, said the dragon with deep sadness for the fact that he was about to lose the one who was perhaps his best friend. Issei. Why are you apologizing, Drag? If the one who cowg should apologize is me, since I stained your name, it was because of me cowg that you lost your reputation, so I ask you to forgive me for that. Drag. Sorry, said Issei, while tears of pain, sadness and regret ran down his eyes as he apologized to his best friend, while his eyes shone brighter and brighter. Drag. A stupid reputation doesn't matter to me when I'm losing my best friend. Do you think that pride means something at this point? Said the red dragon, very upset seeing how his best friend Issei regretted the damage he caused to him, but at this moment, Drag was looking for a way to save his partner. But Issei. Drag, when you find your next cowg carrier. Of. Drag partner. Era. Issei. Just make sure you don't do much. The RAIG partner. 8-4. Issei. Make the same mistakes as me, cowg, and above all. Hyoudou Issei. Why? Brave comrade, resist, surely there is something that. He already. Issei. Make sure he's the best Sekiryuutei of all time. He is dead. Brave partner. And so Hyoudou Issei passed away. He died sacrificing himself to stop Rizabum Lib and Lucifer's plans. He died defeating the beast of the apocalypse that day. The world, both supernatural and human, lost a wonderful boy, lost a great warrior, but above all lost a hero. Hyoudou Issei, the most incredible Sekiryuutei of all time. That day, he closed his eyes never to open them again, while his inert body evaporated into particles of light until he disappeared. On the day of the funeral of the hero and pillar of the Hyoudou Issei factions, both the supernatural and human worlds mourned for more than a whole month as a way to honor the great hero of the factions. Of course, the leaders decided to search for his soul in the paradises of mythologies. With such heroic action, it was impossible for him not to be in some paradise. That is what they thought, but when they asked those in charge, they all gave the same answer. Paradise cannot bear his soul. This is too much for all paradises, and the reason for this was that Hyoudou Issei, in just over 1 year of delving into the supernatural, did more than any hero or legend in a lifetime. In other words, the soul of the previous Sekiryuutei was something that could not be born and therefore is beyond the reach of the leaders, who had no choice but to give up on seeing him again and thank him for his sacrifice, for that they could only say goodbye to him with a funeral and brave worthy of the hero of the world, both supernatural and human. And regarding the reactions that Issei's death caused, these were. In the human world, although those who did not know him were saddened to learn that because of his sacrifice they are still alive, so they offered him a minimum of respect so that his soul may rest in peace. With his friends and acquaintances, they were deeply saddened to learn that the perverted beast of Kuoh sacrificed himself for everyone, so they would dedicate to him the maximum honors that can be dedicated to a dead person. Of course, Aki Murayama, Issei's classmate, was the one who was hit hardest by this news, since even though she didn't show it, she was in love with the brunette and now, because of what she claims was fear, she won't be able to tell the boy who loves her. And there is also the case of Kaori Caddis, who was partly the one who discouraged her friend from confessing her love to Hyoudou, because she thought he wasn't worthy of her, but seeing how her friend spends day and night crying, she blames herself for not encouraging her as a friend to confess her love to the boy she liked, and now she can't look her best friend in the eyes, promising herself that she will somehow find a way to fix her mistake. Regarding the chestnut's parents, the news hit them like a thunderclap, and they almost went into a state of denial over the death of their son, but when they remembered what he was like, even though it hurt them a lot and they might never get over it, they felt proud of their son like never before, and even though it hurts, they would never forget him, even if they had another son, they would never forget Issei, being the pride of the Hyoudou. On behalf of the supernatural, all the children who were fans of the Op-Eye Dragon cried for almost a whole day for the death of their hero. But the men who participated in the final battle, they could only thank their savior with tears in their eyes, since it was because of him that they are still alive, and they assured this with all their soul. The people who knew Chestnut were the most devastated, but they had to be strong to support those who were truly hurt by Chestnut's death, and these were them. Issei's women were the ones who took the news the hardest, most of them cried day and night without stopping, some didn't even eat, and as in the case of Akeno and Rias, who were the ones who had the most affection for him, they lost the will to live to the point that their eyes no longer showed anything, they were completely empty, and it was a fact that if it weren't for their friends and respective families, they would have killed each other. But all the girls who loved the brown-haired hero had no idea that very soon they would see him again. Unknown space minutes after the death of Hyoudou Issei. You can see in an unknown space a brown-haired boy of 17 to 18 years of age with hazel-colored eyes and a muscular build without exaggeration, who was in a chair with his eyes closed, a sign of being unconscious. Of course, when he opened his eyes his life would change, perhaps forever. Issei, ooh, and where am I, what place is this, was what the brown-haired boy said when he looked everywhere and didn't recognize the place. Then the memories of the previous battle came to his mind, remembering what happened. Wait, where am I, shouldn't I be dead? And you are, but everything has an explanation, said a female voice which Issei searched for everywhere until, in front of you, idiot, said the voice a little irritated. Issei. What are you waiting for? Who are you? In front of him was a girl of average height, blue hair tied in a similar way to a ring, eyes as blue as the ocean water, a fine face and good proportions, neither too exaggerated nor too few, something like a balance. A very beautiful girl, of course, she could not be compared to Rias or Akeno, even Seraphil would beat her. And her clothing, well, little to say, she wore a pair of high boots, but exaggeratedly high, reaching up to her knees. She also had a blue skirt with pink decorated edges and a vest that left her arms uncovered with separate sleeves. And well, was she eating some chips? Issei. Edo, who are you exactly and where are we? The brown-haired man asked with doubts about the woman in front of him, who, although it didn't seem like it and it's true, gave off a slight divine aura, but it was there. Well, I will give you the honor of knowing who I am the great and beautiful goddess Kuoh, now go ahead, adore me, praise me. Was what she said in a very exaggerated way, managing to get an I'm-type drop out of the brown-haired man's neck, and he remembered a certain Mahu Shoujo demon, and regarding where we are, well, you could say that it is a limbo between life and death, something like that, at least I would say, why you are dead. Included the woman now identified as a Kuoh, and with the last thing she said she alarmed Issei as to why he was in limbo, so he decided to ask. Issei. Wait, how come I'm dead? If that's the case, then why am I not in paradise or the Elysian fields or even Valhalla? Explain to me, I don't understand you at all. Asked a brown-haired man, clearly intrigued by what was happening and why he wasn't in any of the mythological paradises, since he thought he had earned at least a small place in those places. The Kuoh. Well, that's actually quite simple, it's because none of those places can support your soul, and with that, the brown-haired boy was a real bundle of doubts, and just when he was going to ask what he meant. Before you ask any unnecessary questions, let me tell you why no paradise of mythologies can withstand your soul. To sum it up, since you joined the supernatural world a year ago, the only thing you've done is the right thing. You fought against fallen angels who wanted another war, even when you had no reason to get involved. You rescued a woman from an arranged engagement that would have brought her misery, and you also helped the man you hated the most to overcome himself, even though no one would have blamed you for leaving him to his fate. You faced your rival Lucifer until the end, even when it could mean your end. You did it in order to protect your loved ones. You faced an irrational god who wished the apocalypse upon all living beings, even though that responsibility fell on the shoulders of Odin-sama, but you did it of your own free will and to protect the innocent. You faced a demon who wanted to destroy the balance of the world all to protect your friends. You stood up for the Yaokai people and rescued their leader, not because you were ordered to, but because in your opinion it was the right thing to do, and you faced an entire faction just for the others. You went to rescue a dragon goddess and against all odds, even after losing your body in the process you returned home to protect others, because it was the right thing to do. You faced the greatest threat to life all to protect everyone without expecting anything in return, and you even gave your life in the process, so that others could live. The Kuoh. That's why, and just to give the most outstanding examples of your heroic acts, no paradise can bear your soul. That's because in 1 year you did more than all the heroes and legends put together in all their lives. That's why instead of sending you to some paradise, you will be given a second chance. Issei. Can I really get back with the Kuoh? Don't get your hopes up, you can return to life, but not your world, that's the rule. Sorry, but you can't return with them, but in compensation, you can take 3 objects of your choice to the new world, something like compensation. Well, something is something, don't you think? Issei. Well, that's at least something, but do 3 objects offer this deal to everyone who comes here? The Kuoh. Of course not, this deal is only for you for all your actions in life. Well, I leave it to you to choose the objects you choose so that I can reincarnate you in the other world, said the blue-haired girl, and then made several cards appear with images on them of the objects that can be chosen. So 5 minutes passed in which Issei racked his brains thinking about which object to choose since they were permanent while the Kuoh. Hey, I still don't know that you're an airhead and very perverted and that you must have been lost in my perfect body all the time, but hurry up, I have more people to attend to. Said the self-proclaimed goddess in a very annoying way to the point that she managed to make a vein appear on Issei's forehead from fury, and he was about to say something, but just at that moment, he came up with something very perverted idea of not only choosing the objects, but putting the rude goddess in her place. Issei. Excuse me for asking, but could these objects also be things from my world, just in case? The brown-haired man asked very calmly, given the anger he felt, and the self-proclaimed goddess's response was also her sentence. The Kuoh. Well, why do you ask? Asked the blue-haired girl, quite surprised but with a bad feeling about what the brunette in front of her would ask for. Issei. That being the case, I already know what I will order. The Kuoh finally, and what will it be? Issei. First I'll take the boosted gear that has Drake's soul to that new world. The Kuoh. Wait, I'll confirm if it's possible. Well, yes, you can take the artifact and the dragon's soul, according to what the superiors said. Issei. Well, the second object that I will take is the sword Excalibur, of course, but this must be the original, and I will be the only one capable of carrying it besides my children. The Kuoh. Damn, you asked for something complicated, let me confirm it. Well, the superiors said it was fine, and that they already made the modifications to the sword just as you asked, and what's the last thing you're going to ask for? He said with clear boredom, a boredom that would go away very soon. Issei. Well, the last thing I want to take to the other world is you, a Kuoh. The Kuoh. I see, wait, it took him at least 30 seconds to process what the brown-haired man said, and when he did, what? And just at that moment, a woman with rather strange clothing and golden hair would descend from the sky, and she would just say. Mysterious girl. Don't worry, Kuoh-sama, until you return I will take care of everything as your replacement, so don't worry about anything and enjoy your trip, and then the two were elevated in a kind of field of light that raised them little by little. The Kuoh. Wait, this shouldn't be possible. There must be a mistake. Please tell me this is a joke. Issei. Ahahaha, maybe next time you won't be so stupid and self-centered, you deserve this and more. Mysterious person. Well, enjoy your trip and don't worry if they defeat the Demon King then you can return. Well, until then, have a good trip and good luck. With that said, the beam of light became more and more intense and before it finished its teleportation process. The Kuoh. This isn't fair, was the last thing the blue-haired girl said before being teleported along with Issei to the new world. What adventures await Issei in this new world? Find out in the next chapter. Don't miss it. Chapter 1. The City of Axel and starting out his adventures. It was a new day in the City of Beginners or the City of Axel for all of that without counting the fact that 2 new faces that should never have been in that place were there if they were the goddess of the Axis cult Kuoh and the newly reborn Sekiryuutei Hyoudou Issei, who had just arrived in the new world which for a long time would be the home of the 2 subjects in question. Ignore the RPG icons. And now with our protagonists, well, only one was calm, while the other was more than upset and babbled nonsense. Asuma and Issei have few differences beyond the clothes that you can imagine, and after using Drake's power so much, their eyes changed color irremediably, and this is if the change of eye color is possible. Issei. So this is the new world. It looks more like a medieval fantasy world and everything, don't you believe Kuoh-san, he said to not receive a response from his companion, Kuoh-san, without a response again, and already a little tired Kuoh-san wake up, and with that he was able to get her out of the trance, in which the poor girl was stunned. Kuoh. Don't you see in the state I am in, I was brought to this world as if I were an object, how do you think I feel? Tell me how you think, said the imitation of a goddess to the brown-haired boy, which although it angered him a little when he saw the girl's reaction, it was all worth it. Issei. You took this upon yourself, don't forget it, if you hadn't been so rude and mean, then I wouldn't have gotten angry and brought it with me, don't forget it, the brown-haired man said to the blue-haired woman before answering, well it's not the time for fights Kuoh-san, for now it's better to look for the Heroes Guild, at least that way we can get some money, since I doubt they accept yen here. Kuoh. I'm a little impressed by how you stay calm even under the pressure of being in another world, but what can you expect from someone who faced an evil, destructive dragon god and won? The goddess said more calmly. And if you're looking for the guild, it would be best if you ask the civilians, since although I'm a goddess who is greatly worshipped here, my job was elsewhere, as you already know, and you'll remember where you brought me from. Issei. Yes, I already suspected that, and don't worry, for now it's better to start looking for the guild to register in it and get money, and so the two of them looked for the guild, and almost 5 minutes later it was when a peasant who was passing by told our two heroes where the guild is located and during the walk. Issei na Kuoh-san. Kuoh, what do you want? Issei. Calm down, I just wanted to know where Excalibur was. I know the boosted gear is in my soul, but what about Excalibur? At least I thought I would have it on my back or something like that. Kuoh. Seriously, you're stupid, aren't you? Well, in fact, most people who ask for swords get them like that, so I have no right to get angry. Regarding the Excalibur sword you asked for from your world, it was kept with your other sword. Issei. So it's in the boosted gear, am I wrong? Kuoh. No, you're not wrong, but I just have a question. Issei, what is it? Kuoh. Why out of so many legendary weapons and tools did you decide on that war with the crying dragon? Issei, simple. Kuoh, what would have happened if Drake was still in my homeworld? Kuoh. Well, he would have continued reincarnating there from carrier to carrier until the end. Why? Issei. And how long would it have taken Drake to fall into the hands of a very manipulable subject? Kuoh, although a lot had happened, where do you want to go? Issei. What I'm saying is that by bringing Drake with me, I will also take away one of the two celestial dragons, which could end up being used for evil deeds in my world, so why not take it with me instead? Issei said, to which Kuoh understood that even dead he defended his homeworld, and there's also the fact that Drake is my best friend, so if I have the opportunity to fight by his side again, then why not take advantage of it? Kuoh. I see, then the reason is that. I must say that even in another world you decide to protect it by taking the celestial dragons with you, said Kuoh, to which Issei, noticing that she used the plural dragons, decided to ask. Issei. Hey Kuoh, why did you say dragons? As far as I remember, I only took Drake, and Albion is with Volley. Issei asked, very intrigued, to which the blue-haired girl with a serious expression just said. Kuoh. Issei, maybe you don't know, but Volley Lucifer died from the wound that his grandfather caused him. As his last will he asked Albion to fuse with your soul, or that you also become the bearer of the dividing. Kuoh said seriously to what Issei was about to ask why he couldn't use it in the final battle, but, and regarding why you only find out now, it is because Volley Lucifer died exactly 10 minutes before your death against the Trihexa, that is why you couldn't use it until now. Issei. I see, so Volley too, damn it, yes, just, well, it's not the time to think about what already happened, now we can only look forward without any remorse, said Issei with a treacherous tear running down his face. By the way, where did Volley's soul go, or did you also send it here, Kuoh-san? Kuoh. Nope, his soul went straight to paradise, this time it went to Valhalla because of the closeness that Odin has with him, that's why, Kuoh said calmly, and the silence lasted until, look, we're here, she said, pointing ahead to what Issei would notice at the building further ahead, which was the city guild. Issei. Finally, the place was quite far away. Well, for now it's better to go in, but first, he said, then taking Kuoh to an alley where no one passed by. Kuoh, wait, what do you think you're doing, pervert? I know I'm too beautiful, but at least have a little self-control, you look like a monkey in heat, said the blue-haired girl, and would have continued if she hadn't received a blow to the forehead courtesy of Issei. Ouch, what's wrong with you? Issei. Shut up, do you want to? I didn't bring you here for that reason, it's for something else, so listen to me and don't interrupt, understand? Said Issei with a serious face to the fourth goddess, to which she only listened. Well, I'll only say 3 things. First, don't lick the attention by saying that you are a goddess, remember that others would only call you crazy, and under no circumstances should you introduce yourself, not even to your followers, as their goddess, understand? said Issei with a very serious face, to which she was very surprised, so she decided to ask. The Kuoh. And why can't I introduce myself as I am to my faithful? She said with great doubt and a small pout. Issei. Do you know what happened to Jesus, the Son of God? Issei asked to see if a Kuoh finally understood the situation they were in. The Kuoh. Well, he was crucified by don't tell me what, said a Kuoh fearfully and praying that it wasn't what she thought. Issei. Yes, if you tell them hey, look at me, I'm the goddess that you praise, a Kuoh-sama, they'll call you crazy, and your followers will either repudiate you for life or execute you for such heresy to their beliefs. After all, who would believe that their goddess would come down from her throne just to see a few of her followers? Issei said calmly but very seriously about the matter. The witch Kuoh, very scared of what might happen to her, swore not to tell anyone that she is a goddess, least of all her followers. Issei. Okay, point number 2, don't think that it'll do all the work, that's clear to you. The Kuoh, what exactly do you mean? Issei. You'll also have to help, tell me what you can do exactly, do you have any attack power or can you at least heal? The Kuoh. Well, not attack as such, but I can heal any wound, purify the water, and also if you die or anyone dies, I can revive them. Issei. Well, with it I want you to be the healer, so don't even think about putting yourself in front under any circumstances, that's clear, he said it with a more than terrifying face. The Kuoh. Yes, it's clear I won't risk it, the blue-haired girl said this moving her head up and down, frantically implying that Issei's instructions were clear to her. Issei. And third and most importantly, don't even think about behaving as if you were all-powerful or else, the brown-haired man said this while making a sign with his thumb on his neck that meant obey or die, something that scared a Kuoh in an exaggerated way since although it may not seem like it, she is very afraid of the brown-haired man as he is much more powerful than her and immediately afterward, a Kuoh just nodded erratically. Issei. Well then let's go in, said the brown-haired man and then opened the door. Inside, they saw first a waitress who served them with some jugs of beer in her hand, and then they saw several adventurers in armor, others with canes and others in elegant clothes, in short, a typical RPG tavern. Then Issei and his companion went to the counter where a blonde woman with large breasts who did little to hide them served them. Receptionist. Welcome to the Adventurers Guild of Axel City. How can I help you, travelers? The blonde receptionist with enormous breasts told our protagonists, which is obvious. Issei. Well, my partner and I would like to register in the guild as adventurers, said the brown-haired man calmly, waiting for the receptionist's response, which was. Receptionist. Okay, then I'll need you to pay the registration fee, he said simply to the two. Issei. Now I see the problem is that due to the very long journey we undertook from our homeland, we ran out of money, in fact it was a miracle we were able to get here before hunger hit us along the way, so there is no other way to register and carry out missions. Well, it's mostly because of the trip, Issei said with a calm expression to the receptionist who was thinking and regarding a Kuoh, well she was impressed at how the brown-haired boy invented such an elaborate story out of nothing. Receptionist. Well, I think I can make an exception in your case due to your circumstances and give you the registration on loan, meaning you'll pay for it with the mission you complete. Are you okay with this? The receptionist calmly asked the two in front of her. Issei. Well that would be fine, I think it's a good deal, let's accept then, said the brown-haired man speaking for himself and his companion. Immediately afterward, the receptionist took out a crystal sphere and told them to put their hands on the crystal to create their adventurer cards. First, there was a Kuoh, which was good. Receptionist. Incredible, this is incredible, said the receptionist very excited when she saw the water card, which is good. Receptionist. Not counting the low intelligence that prevents you from being a sorceress, you can become any kind, priestess, swordmaster, anyone, this is something I have almost never seen. The Kuoh. Does that mean I'm great? A Kuoh asked with the intention of showing off her statistics in Issei's face, poor fool, and thus making him stay quiet and praise her completely like the goddess she is. Receptionist. Great is an understatement, it's like she's a heroine, we'll expect a lot from you, a Kuoh-sama, said the receptionist respectfully, which caused one. A Kuoh's pride and ego to skyrocket and 2. Issei to get a headache because his partner was so conceited. Now he could only pray that her stats were good enough so that the blue-haired girl wouldn't brag about it in his face, and the result was. Receptionist was the girl's cry of surprise when she saw Issei's statistics, which it's good that the girl tells us. Receptionist. This is incredible, never in my life have I seen anything like this, all your statistics are at the level of an adventurer of the highest elite, even your intelligence is on par with the best and most powerful magicians in history, is like a legend, like a prodigy that is born once every millennium, we will be expecting great things from you Hyoudou Issei-sama, and from you too a Kuoh-sama. she said in a more than euphoric way to the two adventurers, which as soon as they entered already made a great impression, and also in passing Issei saved himself from Kuoh's stupidities in an absolute way by completely surpassing her. Of course, she already expected that since well, we are talking about the guy who faced Trihexa face to face and won nothing that she did not expect. From that moment on, both Issei and Kuoh carried out simple missions as a duo. Such missions ranged from helping with construction, painting, and cleaning. According to Issei, this was to get some equipment, although Kuoh has been demanding that Issei go and defeat the Demon King once and for all, in order to be free of that world. Regarding Issei's power, he has had many problems summoning the sacred gear that he possesses. According to Kuoh, this is because his power is still very unstable, and therefore a few days will have to pass before being able to speak with Drake or speak with Albion again. Regarding where our protagonists sleep, well, the stables, this for not having enough money to be able to pay for a house, something that is slowly starting to bother Issei, but still not enough to do anything about it. This was until 2 days after arriving in the new world, Kuoh had the brilliant idea of going on a hunting mission against giant toads, and how it turned out, well, immediately afterwards. That day Kuoh got a trauma with the toads, and a very strong one, that's for sure. Chapter 2 New members and one is a nautromasochist. Well, it's another day in Axel, and regarding the previous scene that could be seen when Kuoh was devoured by a toad, to explain it completely, we will have to go back to the morning. Axel City Stables Dawn. In the stables of the city you can see a somewhat particular scene. In that place are our protagonists Issei, who woke up recently, was well with absolute disbelief, seeing his teammate Kuoh who was sleeping in a quite suggestive way, and something not to say very careless. Well, she had her pajamas open in the abdomen area, and even if she had pants on, she kept her legs open, things that Issei did not find funny in the least, because of how careless and very unfeminine the useless goddess was in his opinion. Issei. Hey, Kuoh wakes up, no response. Kuoh wakes up, same result, and Issei was already getting really angry until luckily for the blue-haired goddess he woke up before Issei left a mark on him so he wouldn't fall asleep. The Kuoh said good morning, the blue-haired girl said in a very carefree manner. Issei. No good morning, it's already past noon, what happened with that hunting mission, explain to me, said Issei with a vein in his forehead as he remembered a certain black-haired Nekomata and a certain pair of lazy dragons who only spend their time sleeping. Inside Issei, 2 red and white dragons respectively who were ironically sleeping sneezed, and in their consciences, they felt offended for some reason. World of DxD. In the world of high school DxD, more specifically in the Hyoudou residence, a black-haired Nekomata sneezes. Hiroka Achu. Kaneko. Are you okay, Nisama? Asked a certain albino loli who still had a somewhat sad face because of the death of her senpai. Hiroka. Yes, Shirin Naya, I'm fine. It's just that for a second I felt like someone was using me to refer to someone else. I'm sure it's a beauty they're using to compare me to. Kaneko is just a lazy person just like Drake-san and Albion-san, and regarding them, what happened with that pair of underdeveloped lizards, yep, Kaneko insults Drake and Albion more for fun than anything else. Hiroka. I don't know, but their energies and souls still exist. Right now, we're waiting for them to wake up so we can look for them. Tilde, see thoughts Issei senpai. In the world of Konosuba. Inside Issei, the dragon sneezed again and felt very offended, and in their conscience, they swore to destroy an albino loli. Outside of Issei things were not calm since Kuoh suggested going on a hunting mission, and the result was good. Kuoh was eaten by the giant toads that are her prey twice, the first time for being boastful, while Issei devised a strategy and Kuoh, well, before being eaten the first time. Kuoh knew Issei, do you need help, hey do you need IT? Said Kuoh in a very rude and arrogant way to the brown-haired man who in his mind only said. Issei, thoughts. I swear I'll bury her on the way home. That was what the brown-haired boy thought when he saw a toad chasing him, but it focused on Kuoh, unfortunately for the blue-haired girl who didn't even realize what was happening and that she would soon be eaten by a giant toad. And why doesn't Issei use his new sword or the boosted gear? Well, that's because the chestnut's energy hasn't completely stabilized yet, and when he asked Kuoh how much longer it would take to stabilize, she told him that in 2 more days, it would be completely stable. Well, in short, Kuoh was devoured twice by the giant toads, and it was Issei who had to rescue her. The second time was when she tried to use a rare attack of hers that she called God Blood that according to her carried all the fury of the goddess in question, and well, it was of no use as you can understand. And so we focus on the Guild of Heroes more in a specific month, where our 2 heroes are well, a hero and a failed attempt at a goddess. I will call it that for at least 5 more chapters, or until I feel like stopping, who were discussing the topic of allies. Kuoh. I think we need more companions, don't you think so, Issei? That's what the blue-haired girl said to the brown-haired boy who looked at her somewhat confused, to which he responded calmly. Issei. What's up with this suddenly, the thing about the companions, if I can ask here after all until now that you mention it, said the brown-haired man somewhat uneasy about the goddess's suggestion. The Kuoh say tell me one thing, can you summon your gauntlet now with the lazy crybaby inside or not yet? The blue-haired girl asked calmly to receive a negative from the brown-haired girl and a red dragon sleeping inside. It growled annoyed, I see, and what about the wings of the lizard with a snowman complex? Same answer and a growl from the dull white dragon, that's why we need them at least until you can summon one of the two. Issei. I can see your point, but how did you come up with the idea of joining people to our group? As far as I know, you don't usually talk much about the subject with the other adventurers, said Issei calmly and somewhat curious as to how the blue-haired girl came up with the idea of joining people to the group. The Kuoh. That's simple, Issei, we'll do it. Suddenly he takes out a cloth from who knows where, with this, the object in question was a poster to hang on the mission wall which said. Cartel. O noble adventurers, you are offered the honor of participating and becoming members of the largest elite group in the city, which includes the great and wonderful Kuoh-sama and the prodigy adventurer Hyoudou Issei. So, all who meet the requirement are welcome to join this great group that will reach the top of everything. By the way, the requirement is to be high-class adventurers, add a Kuoh. Issei. A Kuoh-san, Issei called the blue-haired girl calmly. The Kuoh. Yes Issei-san, what's happening? I already know that I'm a genius, right? With this, people will line up to join our group. Issei. Are you crazy? With this you will only make them escape. You are practically saying that only elites are allowed to join our group. Are you crazy? Issei said, scolding a Kuoh who was now crying because of how Issei yelled at her. 1 hour later. After Issei calmed a Kuoh down after making her cry and they hung up the announcement, they were waiting, and when they saw that no one was approaching, a Kuoh decided to ask. The Kuoh and Issei-san, why is no one coming? It is assumed that by this time they should already be queuing, don't you think, said a Kuoh confused as to why no one was coming to ask to be recruited by her group, to which Issei decided to say the reason. Issei. A Kuoh, do you remember what level we are on, just in case? Issei said with his eyes closed. The Kuoh. Well, you could say that we are the best in the world, why do you ask? Issei. That's why everyone feels intimidated to join our group because of our levels. First, there's you, a useless goddess with high stats, this offended a Kuoh a lot, and then there's me, the one they call the prodigy who is born every 1,000 years, so do you think anyone would want to join a group with such members? If I were an adventurer like the others, then I wouldn't be crazy to approach such an elite group. And that's how Issei and a Kuoh were waiting for someone to join the group, and when they were about to give up, a girl with a strange hat passed by the board and could see the recruitment announcement, and when she approached, she spoke to the 2 members of the group. By chance I saw the announcement that they were looking for members for their group and I was wondering if they would accept me, to which the 2 would look at where the voice of the girl in question was coming from. She was not tall, in fact she was quite short, maybe 150 or 154 centimeters, correct me if I'm wrong, with a very peculiar outfit. She was wearing a red one-piece dress with orange details on one of her legs, she was bandaged, fingerless gloves on her hands and no patch on her left eye. That added to her hat made her look totally strange. Tell me, adventurer, do you perhaps desire the forbidden magic that I carry? Do you perhaps think that you will be able to control the power that resides within me? I present myself before you as Megumin, the best archmage of the Crimson Clan demons, she said, this making a very strange pose while her eyes shone. And well, Issei had a face of complete bewilderment and a Kuoh could identify his eye and see that he was telling the truth until suddenly he collapsed on the ground. Issei. You know, if you wanted us to invite you to eat you just had to say it, and what's up with that patch? If something happened to your eye, why don't you let this useless one here cure you? After all, it's the only thing she's good at. The Kuoh. Hey, how useless. Megumin. In reality, it is a magical artifact that contains my enormous power, and if it were to be taken away from me, then a great catastrophe would be unleashed upon the world. Issei. Is it some kind of seal? Megumin. In fact, that was a lie, she used it because it looks cool. Then Issei pulls the patch off Megumin's face, and while he does so, a Kuoh explains to her that crimson demons are born with great intelligence and very strange names. Issei. By the way, what are your parents' names? Issei asked calmly, to which the friend made a very strange pose and said it. Megumin. I was waiting for you to ask, my mother is Yui and my father is Hyoudou. When he said that a Kuoh and Issei had these faces. Thus put Kuoh's uniform on Kazuma and he's already an Issei from Konosuba. Issei. Well, they are somewhat peculiar names, but I can't complain either. Okay, why don't you show us your adventurer card? Issei said as Megumin, sitting with her head resting on the table, gave them to him. The Kuoh. Well, she's authentic, that's for sure. Besides, she's like she says, she's an archmage and on top of that, quite strong. Issei. Hey, and from what I see, their magic levels are also very high. The Kuoh and toilet add that she can use explosion magic, which is the most powerful offensive magic of all. She is truly a gem. Megumin. Hey, I'm not you, and I would appreciate it if you called me by my name at least. Issei. Well Megumin, why don't you show us how your magic works? What are you saying? Change of scene. Giant frog meadow midday. Now we can see on a huge plain our three protagonists who are preparing to finish the pending hunting mission and in the process, see the capabilities of the new member of the group, the Archmage of the Crimson Demons Megumin. Issei. Well, you can see two giant toads. Megumin, could you attack the one that is further away? Issei asked his new partner, praying that it is not as useless as the failed attempt at the goddess that he has as a partner, which well, she only charged against the toad with another of her rare attacks, the god Requiem, which has the love and compassion of the goddess, and was devoured again. And regarding Megumin's attack, she started reciting a spell, don't even think I'll write it, she changes it from one chapter to the next, and I won't go to so much trouble. During the process the toad was enveloped by a kind of nebula of magic, and just when it ended and Megumin said the final word when she said explosion the whole place was destroyed. Something like that. And when it ended you could see a burned crater where the frog had been, but just at that moment Megumin collapsed from exhaustion, and the explanation she would give would make Issei regret having accepted her into his group. Issei. Hey Megumin, what happened to you? Asked a brown-haired boy, fearing what the little black-haired magician would say. Megumin. What happens is that explosive magic is not only the most powerful of all, but one of the ones that consumes the most magic, therefore when I use it, I am left in this state of extreme exhaustion, and I can't move for a while, she said when she felt a toad approaching her. I didn't think one would come out so close, excuse me could you help, she didn't finish speaking, because the toad ate her and Issei well. Issei. Uyoi don't let yourselves be eaten. And so the hunting mission ended in a more than strange way. Change of scene. Streets of Axel sunset. Now we focus on the city of Axel, more specifically on one of its streets where our three protagonists are crossing, two of them covered in drool, and one carrying a black-haired loli, and during the journey, Issei decided to talk about the group. Issei. Listen Megumin, even if your explosive magic is the best, don't use it unless it's an emergency, understood? For now, focus on your other magic, he said, hoping to receive a nod from the girl, but in his place. Megumin. I can't use it, was what Megumin said to Issei, who was praying that it wasn't what it meant. Issei. Huh? Megumin. I can't use other magic, I can only use explosive magic. Issei. Are you serious? Megumin. Yes, I have consolidated my knowledge of explosive magic, so I can't use any other magic. No, I will never use any other type of magic. For me, explosive magic is everything. Issei. Thoughts? Great, another useless one and the worst, almost at the level of this goddess joke, looking at how they support each other, yes, another useless one, although for a moment I could see the level of her explosive magic which was quite good, and if we add that with Drag I can replenish her energies, it is something like a final weapon, well, I said that I accepted it, and I do not go back on my word. Issei. Well, I guess we welcome you to the group, but remember, you will only attack when things get dangerous, is that clear? Issei said, to which Megumin, very excited, nods very happily, well, for now let's go to the guild. So the three of them headed to the guild, but not before taking a bath to remove the stench from their bodies. Well, in the case of Kuoh and Megumin, in the case of Issei, he was just relaxing after the long day he had, and so he could start his way to the guild. Change of scene. Axel Guild dusk. Now we focus on Axel's guild, more specifically in two places: the bulletin board and a table with only one occupant at the table is everyone's favorite chestnut Hyoudou Issei, who well is just thinking about the situation he is in a reflective way, and as for the board, well, the typical thing with the recruitment announcement of the failed goddess joke, or that would be if not for someone who could notice him and with obvious intentions approached Issei's table. By chance I saw your recruitment poster and it caught my attention. Immediately after Issei turns to see the person, and with that he blushes because of who is in front of him in question. She was a pretty beautiful blonde girl, tall about 1.75 to 1.77 meters tall, blonde hair like the sun, blue eyes like the sky, and proportions that although hidden by her armor, it was clear that they were quite good, almost the level of Rias does not reach her, but it is quite close. This was the description of the girl's appearance. Are they still looking for members? The girl said this calmly. And regarding her attire, it was that of a knight, but the difference is that she wore a kind of yellow armor trench coat with metal plates on both sides, metal boots, a breastplate that instead of hiding her chest, highlighted it, a metal shoulder pad, and another that looked like feathers, in short, a true knight. Issei. Boo, well it's true that we're still looking, but I wouldn't recommend it much. He said this with a stutter and a bit of nervousness for having such a beautiful girl in front of him. I see, I'm glad I spent a lot of time looking for someone like you. Then she blushes and sighs in a slightly strange way, something that Issei found strange. My name is Darkness and I'm a paladin. She said this with her eyes closed and with her breathing quite agitated, something that didn't give the brown-haired boy a good feeling. Darkness. And why would like to join your group. He said this approaching Issei in a dangerous way and with a more than obvious blush. I thought this doesn't give me a good feeling. Issei Edo. Darkness. Tell me, what happened to those two girls covered in dirt to make them be like that? The blonde said this with a rather obvious blush and heavy breathing, a sign of excitement. Issei. Boo, well, that's because the giant toads devoured them, you see. He couldn't finish because Darkness interrupted him. Darkness. What did you say? It's worse than I imagined. When he said this he paused momentarily while Issei remained silent. I can't simply ignore two young girls who experienced something similar. He said this close to Issei's face, which when seeing his eyes only thought one thing. Issei, thoughts. She's the same as Akeno when her masochistic side awakens. I just hope I'm wrong, because if so, she'll just be another useless person, just like the useless goddess in Megumin. DxD world. In the DxD world, a certain brunette with her hair tied in a ponytail sneezes. Akeno Achuu, when she sneezed all the others in the room they were in turn to look. Akeno, are you okay? This was said by a blue-haired girl with a green streak. Akeno. If I'm fine, Zenobia-san, why do you ask? Zenobia. It's just weird that you sneeze like that. Akeno. Well, I just felt that someone used me to refer to another person. Could it be my ideas? It was probably a masochistic person they used to compare you to. This was said by a rather attractive redhead who was with all the brown-haired women who fell in love with him. Asia. Even so, those boys are very insistent. Even when I tell them that I have a boy that I like, they continue bothering me. This was said by a very shy blonde who is Asia Argento, a former nun who rescued Issei on more than one occasion. Akeno. If you then why don't you do what I did to make them stop bothering me, Asia-chan? When the black-haired girl said this, everyone got goosebumps remembering the poor devil who insulted Issei in front of Akeno. Well, I'll just say that now I won't be able to have children. Rias, I think that's a bit excessive, Akeno. And so all the girls who love Issei are waiting for him, even if they wait a lifetime with only one thought in mind. DIRLS, we miss you, Issei. Mundo de Konosuba. During the time we saw the DxD world, Issei and Darkness had a small conversation in which Issei came to a conclusion after everything Drachna said. I thought she's a masochist, that's for sure. From now on I will simplify most of the story, things that are relevant like a new character or something of utmost importance will be explained in detail. After that day, the next morning at the guild where Issei witnessed a Kuoh's trick that she called natural beauty was when Megumin explained to him how skill points are used. It should be noted that Issei, due to his ability acquired in his other world, managed to get about 10 to 11 points, and although Megumin offered to teach him explosive magic, Issei thought it would be better for another time, because he is still a novice, so he will wait until he is better with basic magic and can wake up the two lazy dragons. Brig Albion. Who are you calling lazy? Author, do you see another pair of sleepy lizards around here? Brig Albion. You'll be a damn miserable free ensign who lost her love. Author. Don't provoke me or else. Brago, but author of fourth. Author, otherwise I put Tiamat inside Issei and chain them both with indestructible anti-magic chains, and at the same time I give him S&M equipment the size of Great Red. Brig Albion. Please, we are sorry, but don't bring that crazy girl. Author. Well, that's how I like my dogs, to be very submissive. Now leaving this stupid interruption, let's continue with the story after explaining Megumin to Issei about the points and offering him the explosive magic, which Issei rejected calmly without calling her little girl, but by her name, and that Darkness returned to talk to Issei and in the process introduce him to a friend who offered to teach him the skills of the branch of thieves. Of course, the demonstration of steel against Issei ended with Chris trying to steal the brown-haired man's purse. Which he didn't achieve, mainly because of the difference in powers between the two. This is what it looks like. By the way, Issei came to feel something strange in Chris's aura, but he didn't take it too seriously, and regarding when it was Issei's turn to use steel, Issei accidentally stole Chris's panties. Of course he took advantage to annoy her a little, which caused Darkness to become more enthusiastic about being part of Issei's team. Regarding the cabbage mission, it was the same as in the original anime, the only difference is the fact that Issei got more cabbages than Kazama obviously, so his reward was greater. In addition, Issei was able to see the maximum reach of Darkness's masochism, which gave him goosebumps a little. Well, that would be the day that Issei got most of his members, only missing 2, but that's for later. Chapter 3. The Demon King General and another reincarnated person appear. It's a new day in the city of Axel in which our four protagonists are talking calmly. Well, that is the case of the three girls since Issei was meditating on the situation. This after learning a new ability, Create Water, a basic water ability which theoretically should not be very good, but when Issei used it, he little more and flooded the guild if he hadn't stopped in time, so he asked Kuoh what happened and she just said. Kuoh. And what did you expect? You are a human with the two celestial dragons sealed inside. Add to that the fact that you possess the power of the dragon god of dreams and the power of the dragon goddess of infinity. In your case, even a beginner's technique becomes destructive. Imagine what would happen to Megumin's magic. That was the goddess's response, and regarding the group's conversation, we'll go back 10 minutes. 10 minutes ago Axel's guild. Issei was sitting quietly and relaxing because something told him that he would soon have problems, and he assured him of that, and with his companions well. Darkness. Hey look Issei, I repaired my armor with the reward I earned from the cabbage mission, what do you think? Darkness asked excitedly, waiting for the brown-haired boy's response. Issei. Ooh it's not bad, it looks shiny, that's for sure, I think it looks good on you, said Issei praising Darkness a little, who blushed a little at Issei's compliment. Darkness. Thanks, by the way, what's wrong with Megumin? He said, pointing to the aforementioned who was hugging her new staff with a perverted expression and regarding Kuoh well. Kuoh. Hey, what does this mean? How come my reward was so little? Don't you look at all the cabbages I caught? She said angrily, fighting with the receptionist. By the way, the girl at the reception, Luna, formally introduced herself with her name after the cabbage mission, in case you were wondering. Luna. Excuse me, but most of what you brought was lettuce. Kuoh. What were they doing there, lettuce, he said, and then turned to Issei with a very unique look, a look he never gave her before, a happy look while saying his name while jumping. And so we return to the present time in which Kuoh asked what was Issei's total profit in the mission recently, and perhaps take a part of it, since it was because of his debts that he thought he would get a large amount of Agares, which did not happen. Kuoh. And Issei, how much did you get from the mission? Kuoh asked with a knowing smile. Issei alone with his eyes closed decided to speak. Issei. Around 1,250,000 Agares, said Issei, to which his companions were amazed. Issei got a small fortune in that mission, of course. Kuoh's eyes were shining, knowing how much Issei got in the cabbage mission, and it was a fact that he would try to get the money from his debts no matter what. Kuoh. Issei Sama, now that I look at it you look more attractive. Issei. At least you try. Immediately after, Issei got up to what Kuoh does, a scene leaving in face the secret of the brown-haired man of how he deals with his needs, so he ends up giving him the money he asked for after all that drama, and that Issei had to give up leaving the stables. He decided to remodel his clothes more than anything, because of the fact that until now, he has used Kuoh's uniform. The next day. The outfit in short consists of a black trench coat with black pants on the chest, back, sides, shoulders and legs, has metal plates almost like Drake's armor, only this one was simpler. This is the clothes she chose, just imagine her with the metal plates. And regarding his sword, he carried it on his hip since it was a common short sword, and regarding the girl's reaction. Megumin, ooh, that's not bad. Darkness. I have to admit it looks pretty good on you, now you look like an adventurer. Kuoh. Well, the uniform took away the fantasy touch. Darkness. Megumin Fantasia. Issei. Well, for now let's go on some mission, said Issei, to which the trio of women could not agree. Megumin. I'm sorry, that's the case, let's go on a mission with a bunch of weak monsters. Ah, I want to try my new staff, said the black-haired girl, clearly enthusiastic and a little excited. Darkness. Let's not go on a mission with a super strong monster with powerful attacks. The blonde on the team said this in a very excited way. Kuoh. Let's not go on a profitable mission. As soon as I get out of debt, I'll finally be able to stop worrying about food. Issei thoughts. These three are undecided. Issei. Then why don't we kill the giant toads? They are still in their mating season and have been causing problems. Kuoh. Megumin. Not giant toads. They said this while they were wriggling. Darkness. What's wrong with them? Issei. I think the giant toads mark them for life since they were swallowed and left covered in slime, said Issei, as he remembered what the giant toad hunting mission was like. Darkness. See, covered in slime, she said this a little excited. Issei. You just got excited, didn't you? The brown-haired boy said with a somewhat cold look. Darkness. I didn't do it, she said embarrassed. So the day passed in which the missions were only difficult. Darkness was about to ask for a very dangerous one to kill the Black Fang, something that Issei completely rejected. And so, after learning from Luna that a general of the Demon King moved near the city, the four of them decided to carry out other activities until the general's issue was resolved. By the way, last night Issei was watching Kuoh make some kind of paper sculptures in the stable. And so for several weeks Issei, Kuoh, Darkness and Megumin lacking missions that they could carry out efficiently, decided to dedicate themselves to daily activities for themselves. Kuoh, due to lack of money, dedicated herself to her work, and to be able to pay her debts, Darkness went to her family's house to strengthen herself with weightlifting, and regarding Issei and Megumin, well, Issei decided to help Megumin with her magic, at the request of the black-haired woman, something that continued for weeks, during which they dedicated themselves to bombing an abandoned castle. At first Issei did it reluctantly, of course. Over time, he took a liking to the results that Megumin's magic generated, until one day. Megumin. Explosion, thus attacking the castle again, which already seemed like it would fall at any moment. Issei Yumu this time was excellent, the vibration and the waves of the explosion shook me to the bones, and the breeze that arrived was very pleasant. This explosion was excellent. Megumin. I see that you understand the way of explosions. You say you want to learn explosive magic and follow the way of explosions with me. Issei. For now I think I'll improve and I'll think about it, but I don't rule out the possibility in the future. Megumin. But how prudent. Stable scene change. We can see Issei lying on the straw of the stable, and Kuoh just arrived with a large bowl of food, which was something pleasant for the brown-haired boy, and when she arrived he asked her something serious. Issei na Kuoh, I ask Issei seriously. The Kuoh Kufasa, said the goddess attempt while she was eating. Issei. First swallow your food before answering, said Issei somewhat angrily. The Kuoh. Swallowing the food, what's up Issei, asked Kuoh to be able to answer her partner's question. Issei. Do you know why I haven't been able to wake up Drag or Labian at least? Issei asked quite seriously, since it's been a long time since they arrived in that world. The Kuoh hhhhmmm, snapping her fingers, I know, maybe it's because their energies continue to synchronize inside you, said Kuoh to leave Issei very confused. Issei. How about synchronizing? Explain yourself, said Issei, very intrigued by the subject. The Kuoh. You see, they are the two celestial dragons, right? He said to receive a nod from the brown-haired. Remember that even with it their energies are opposite. Drag, the crying red lizard, is the dragon of domination, right? He said, and again a nod. Already a sleeping red dragon growling annoyed inside Issei, and Albion the white dragon with a snowman complex is the dragon of supremacy, right? Same response from both Issei and Albion asleep inside Issei. That is why their energies, being completely opposite, cannot adapt to your body. That is why they are synchronizing with the purpose that the process of using their powers does not kill you. But this can take maybe 1 or 2 months, he said, and Issei looked at her somewhat terrified. But that only if you wait, but the process can be accelerated with a catalyst. Issei. A catalyst? I ask Issei. The Kuoh. Yes, a catalyst, something that can synchronize the two energies more quickly, some strong emotion, for example anger, but not a conventional one, but a very strong one that makes you lose control, I would say. Issei. I see, said the brown-haired man, thinking about what to do regarding the issue of how to awaken his power, not knowing that soon an event would help him, in which a certain perverted paladin and a formidable headless enemy would be involved. The next day, Axel Guild morning. Now we can see Issei's team sitting around talking about trivial things until. Receptionist. All adventurers are asked to take up arms and head to the city gate. It's an emergency, said the receptionist, very upset. Issei. What will happen? The brown-haired boy wondered, not knowing the enemy that was waiting to challenge them. Adventurer 1. Hey, are you serious? He said this, very upset by what was happening. Adventurer 2. This is serious stuff. Said a muscular guy with a punk hairstyle. Issei. Wait a minute, he really seems very strong, and that's how it was because he was in front of them. I am one of the generals of the Demon King who moved to the nearby castle. My name is Veldia. In front of them, in front of the adventurers, was a general of the Demon King, and to make matters worse, it was clear from afar that he was powerful. Darkness? Is he a Dullahan? Darkness said this seriously because of the situation they were in. Veldia. Day after day after day after day, he said this while shaking his head in anger. Who was the idiot who has been attacking my castle with explosive magic? He said this very annoyed, and that fact is not exaggerated. So all the adventurers were looking for the culprit, asking themselves things like explosive magic or someone who uses it, and they came to 2 conclusions. The first and most obvious was Megumin, and the other was a novice red-haired magician. Of course, after hearing the cries of the beginner Megumin, he decided to walk towards the general to face him with the purpose that nothing would happen to the others. Veldia. So it was you. The decapitated man said this with a voice between serious and angry. So it was you, the idiot who attacked my castle relentlessly day after day. His anger was increasingly noticeable. If you know that I am a general of the Demon King, then come and attack me directly at the castle. If you don't have the guts, then stay home trembling. Now he was visibly furious and ready to attack at any moment. Tell me why so much unjustified harassment? He was increasingly annoyed. Don't get conceited just because I ignored the city for weaklings. Does not give you the right to attack my castle day after day. Are you crazy or what? He said while pointing at the little black-haired mage. Regarding Megumin, she was very nervous because of having a general of the Demon King and even more so knowing that it was because of her that he would possibly attack the city. Megumin. I am Megumin, an archmage of the Crimson Demons, and I appeared before the general. Of course everyone did not understand what was happening until, after a few words from the general who identified himself as Veldia, Megumin decided to tell a lie. Megumin. I think your luck ran out when you arrived here just as I planned. This made most people, including Veldia himself, confused by the lowly magician's words until the attack on your castle was planned with the purpose of getting you out, and from what I see it worked perfectly. Now everyone was more than confused about what was happening in front of them. Not to make too long a time, Veldia after cursing Drachnus with a magic that would kill her in a week, which caused Issei's eyes to shine different colors for a second, while the left one shone intense green, the right one was a deep light blue. When Megumin said she would go alone to the castle of the Demon King's general, Issei decided to take the opportunity and accompany her, since he had a pending beating for Veldia, although all that went to hell when Aqua removed the curse from darkness, and that was another day for Team Issei. A few days later Axel Guild. Aqua. Let's go on a mission. He said this very seriously regarding the matter and what this is due to. Aqua. I'm tired of waiting, besides how do I get rid of the debt, and so Aqua after saying that had to discuss with Issei for the mission, which was not easy because he knew that all the missions were very complicated when the blue-haired girl managed to convince the brown-haired boy of a mission, and which one did he choose? Well, that was to purify a lake infested with very lethal crocodiles, which upset the brown-haired boy because of the difficulty of the mission, but in the end, he came up with an idea to purify the lake without taking risks, and that was. Change of scene on the way to the mission. On the way to the mission you can see a group of 4 people, but unlike other times one of them was inside a cage. This is why Issei's plan was simple. They would leave Aqua in a cage in the middle of the lake so that she could purify herself calmly and without danger of being killed, something that worried the goddess who only complained on the way. Once at the lake, the operation to purify the lake water began quietly, which went wonderfully for the first 2 hours, until Megumin said the phrase, I hope everything ends peacefully, which only attracts bad luck, and as if it were a spell, giant crocodiles appeared and surrounded the cage. After 4 hours of purification, Aqua did it desperately, and why doesn't Issei help her? Well, that's because Issei still couldn't awaken his powers, and he made that clear when he tried 2 days ago, shortly after Veldia's attack, and the result obviously failed. But well, regarding the state of the lake, after 7 hours the lake was completely purified, and you could tell just by looking at the water, so clear and crystalline that you could even see the fish swimming in the water from the surface. And regarding the water, well. She was scarred for life again, and now she refused to leave the cage with fear of the outside, which reminded Issei of a certain transvestite vampire. In the world of DxD. Asper. Achoo, the aforementioned sneezed inside his box when he felt that he was compared to someone, and regarding things here, this is the result. Azazel detected the slight spark of power from Dragon Albion when Issei got quite angry, which led him to think that the brown-haired boy's soul was reincarnated in some other world due to the fact that the new Sekiryuutei and Hikaryuku have not appeared until now, and after saying this, the girls, well. Rias became more aggressive with those who tried to court her, whether they were demons or humans, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that she already sent one to the emergency room. The Kendo was much more sadistic with the idiots who tried their luck, and of course they failed miserably, and some even almost lost their children from so many blows. Asia Rena and Zenobia were the least dangerous, but that doesn't mean they don't give the idiots who try to seduce them what they deserve, which results in a very lethal beating from the church trio. With Kaneko and Kuroka, well, I'll just say that they've already sliced off some members of the Fury, and I'm not talking about limbs. And with the quietest ones, which were Seraphol, Rosswise, Yusaka, Penemu, Lefay and Gabriel, well, let's just say that those closest to them learned to fear an innocent smile that even left Hades himself frozen with fear when he had the stupidity to insult Issei in their faces, which ended with a frozen square of Hades with all the stick, which I won't even say where it is embedded. And with the most dangerous of all, Office, because when she felt that spark of energy she was almost torturing Great Red with anxiety, who only prayed that Issei would arrive soon before the lowly of Infinity ended up completing her original purpose with the Chaos Brigade. Yep, things were going very well here. Returning to the world of Konosuba. Now we focus not on our 4 protagonists, but we travel to a mountain where we see a huge dragon which is fighting against a group of 3 people. One man with thick violet armor surrounding purple, blonde hair and a sword of almost legendary design, and 2 women who would be considered copies of Megumin due to the flatness of their bodies. I think this one looks better than the original. Girl 1. That's the legendary dragon. This was said by a green-haired girl. I don't know her name, if anyone knows it, please say it. Girl 2. Do you really think we can do it? We shouldn't run away. This was said by a girl with tomato-colored hair. I don't know her name either. Kayaya thoughts. I am Mitsurugi Kayaya. Although I used to be an ordinary high school student, after dying and meeting a goddess, I was reincarnated as a hero in this world, promising her that I would destroy the Demon King. Kayaya. We can't escape if we don't defeat it. There will be many wounded and dead because of it, pointing his sword at the dragon. We can't surrender. Hey girls, Kayaya. Kayaya, they said this blushing, they stay with the blonde. This is Graham, by the way. Girl 1. That's it. Girl 2, the sword that was given to her by the gods, the cursed sword Graham. So when the blonde pointed his sword at the dragon, launching a cut towards the beast, and at that moment the sword shone, with which that dragon that was once very feared for its power was reduced to nothing with a single cut. Axel City Sunset. Now we focus on the city of Axel, more specifically on a trio of 2 girls and a blonde, and the girls fighting for the attention of the man of the group, and this would have continued like this if it weren't for the fact that Kayaya heard a voice that seemed very familiar to him, a voice that he never thought he would hear again, the voice of a Kuoh's song. And with Issei's group, they were returning from the mission, which was successful at the cost of traumatizing the blue-haired girl, who flatly refuses to leave the cage, all because of her fear of the giant alligators. Issei. He really looks bad, I hope he recovers. The brown-haired boy said this out of concern for his teammate. Darkness. I think we should help her, don't you think? Said the blonde, quite worried about her friend. To summarize, from here it's all the same as the anime, except that the responses from Issei's companions were more extreme, like Darkness rejecting the blonde more severely with his sword, or Megumin with her explosion in a closed room, and a Kuoh, well, it was the same until Kayaya proposed the duel, which, well, just watch for yourselves. I propose a duel. If I win I will take a Kuoh-sama. Issei, thoughts. It's useless to talk to him, it's like talking to a wall. I think I'll have to make him see reason by hitting him. Issei. Fine, but what if I win? Kayaya. In that case, I'll give you whatever you want. Issei. Well, prepare yourself in that case and don't complain when I beat you. Then Issei unsheathes his sword, which, being a common sword, causes the blonde to give him a somewhat haughty look just because he possesses a divine treasure, the cursed sword Grom. Kayaya. I say the same to you. And so the fight began. Both Issei and Kayaya launched themselves head-on in a vertical cut, with the purpose of subduing the other, but the 2 swords, the cursed sword and the common sword, collided, generating a slight wave of wind in their wake, which demonstrated the enormous mastery of Issei with the sword, to the point of equaling Kayaya, who was considered the ace of Axel, ascending lateral descending cuts, and more was what was seen in the battle between the 2 warriors. Kayaya on the one hand was desperately trying to defeat Issei with everything he had, even used the great power of his sword in his strongest cuts in order to win something that did not work, since the brown simply deflected all the cuts, either dodging them to the side or with the sword, moving it in an elegant and calm way. As for Issei, he, thanks to all his lessons and training with Kiba, Tannin and some sword masters from the supernatural world, to be able to control Ascalon this battle against what he considered a novice in the use of the sword. It was relatively easy, of course, if it weren't for the fact that the blonde occasionally used the power of the cursed sword in some downward and lateral cut towards his ribs. Of course, the brown-haired man could handle that power in some way, even without his sacred gear, and so after 10 minutes of sword clashes, attack deflections and failures, you can see Issei with Grom in his left hand pointing at Kayaya with his own weapon, a sign that he has lost something that, although it bothered him a lot, he had to resign himself to, because he lost the battle cleanly and fairly. Kayaya. I guess I lost. Issei-san, tell me what you're going to ask me for your victory today. She said this with a touch of resignation, something her companions didn't believe. Axel, Kayaya's hero, lost against a rookie adventurer. They wanted to think that he cheated, but no matter how hard they searched, they didn't find anything that indicated it. In other words, the brown-haired boy won fairly. Issei. I see, in that case everyone was expectant of what the brown-haired man would ask for, until, I will take your sword, until you are able to hit me even with a single blow, or at least prove to be truly worthy of it. With this everyone was extremely impressed. He wanted the cursed sword, Grom, that was crazy. If the brown-haired man couldn't get the most out of it, of course the blonde's complaint was not long in coming. Kayaya. Wait, what's my sword? That's crazy. Why do you want Grom? After all, you can't even wield it. The blonde said this in a somewhat desperate way, fearing to lose his cursed sword, that sword that helped him so much. Issei. I took it from you for that same reason. The brown-haired man said this in a serious and somewhat annoyed way. Everyone was impressed until he spoke. You depend too much on this sword, and that is why you have not perfected yourself in the use of it. You have to put aside your ego and improve in a humble way. Never forget that. Immediately afterwards the brown-haired man withdraws with the sword Grom on his back, and as the blonde said, He cannot use it completely, but he can wield the weapon itself, in other words, until he can wield Excalibur, he will keep the cursed sword, and just as everyone was withdrawing, it was Kuoh who spoke to the blonde who was on the ground. Kuoh. Be grateful that Issei didn't fight you seriously, Kyoya, since unlike you Issei was already a hero before coming here, and with that he left with the rest of his group, leaving the blonde thoughtful with the phrase he was already a hero before arriving phrase that ate him up inside. Of course, his companions were quick to say things like he cheated, or he surely didn't play clean, and so with the loss of the cursed sword, the former ace of Axel City decided to follow the advice of the brown-haired man and set off to train and one day recover his sword, no matter what the cost. The next day Axel's guild. The next day we can see Kuoh complaining about a reward from yesterday's mission, all because the cage was broken because of Kyoya who bent the bars, and of course, she threatened to throw a god blow in his face, so he did something that in the end she fulfilled when the aforementioned came in to claim his sword in a desperate attempt to get it, but all he got was a gloper from Kuoh and that he lost 300,000 Eris because of her. Well, for the rest, it's only worth clarifying that it was the same as the anime until Veldia's announcement that was broadcast over the city's loudspeakers, all because he seemed very upset, and the reason was, well, it's better if you watch it yourselves. Veldia. You damn ones, why haven't you gone to my castle, damn inconsiderate ones. Yes, he was furious, but for a totally different reason, and it was for not going to his castle. Issei. Who? And that is how the final battle against Veldia begins for the most ridiculous reason possible. One of the most skilled generals in the use of the Demon King's sword will face Issei's team, and without knowing it is his fault that the power that sleeps in the chestnut will be released. But what will happen, all that and more in chapter 4 titled, The Battle Against the Rider and the Inner Fury Awakens. Don't miss it. Chapter 4. The Battle Against the Rider and the Awakening of the Dragon's Fury. Where we stayed was on the outskirts of the city of Axel, more specifically at the entrance of the city, which is being besieged by the general of the Demon King called Veldia, and by the way, he didn't seem very happy, let's say, and the reason is. Veldia. You inconsiderate people, why didn't you go to my castle? Yes, Veldia was angry for the simple and plain fact that they didn't stop the attacks on his castle, which is good, look at yourselves. Issei. Who? What are you talking about? If we already stopped attacking your castle, what are you accusing us of if we haven't done anything? The brown-haired boy said this, clearly confused by the fact that his castle was still under siege when he hasn't helped Megumin with his explosive magic for a couple of weeks. Veldia. That is a very blatant lie, since that day my castle has been besieged relentlessly with explosive magic, said the Dullahan, clearly annoyed by the brown-haired man's lie, since he has not helped Megumin with his explosive magic in recent days, but at that moment the light bulb went on for him. Issei. Turns to see Megumin, who simultaneously turned her face to the other side almost out of embarrassment, and if Issei guessed what immediately followed, he grabs the archmage by the cheeks and stretches them while saying, so it was you. He said this clearly annoyed by Megumin's action. Of course he suspected that she had an accomplice somewhere. To summarize, from here until the fight between Darkness and Veldia, everything was the same as in the anime, including the defeat of the adventurers at the hands of Veldia's technique, in which she throws her head. Without further ado, let's begin. When Darkness saw her fellow adventurers fall before her with her sword in hand, she launched herself against the general. Of course, in the past she would have feared not landing her attacks and thrusts, but when she returned from her training at her family's home, Issei decided to teach her how to use the sword correctly, all because when she asked to be recruited, she said that she misses some blows, therefore, Issei decided to teach her how to use it correctly. Just as Kiba and Zenobia had helped him some time ago. Flashback 10 days before the confrontation between Issei and Kyoya. We can see Issei in Darkness in a helmet with wooden swords, but with what purpose? Well, to make Darkness improve in the use of the sword, mainly because Issei preferred not to do all the work at the time of an important battle. Of course, at first, Darkness flatly refused, but in the end, he accepted when Issei offered him a reward if he completed the training, one that he really seemed to like. From that day until the present, Issei taught him basic styles and postures of combat with weapons, increased his reflexes, corrected his mistakes when attacking, and taught him some other basic techniques of combat with swords. Basically he improved and gave him everything that Darkness was missing. And regarding the reward, I will only say that it included candles and a whip, and it is just as you think. Issei decided to take on the role of sadist that he prepared for Akeno specifically with the purpose of never being the same dissatisfied. The XD world. In the DXD world we can see an Akeno who was finishing off an extremely powerful demon, of course, nothing that she couldn't handle with the help of the girls, but for a second a chill ran down her spine, and then she increased the power of her lightning to levels that the demon could be heard asking for death. Akeno felt that her most desired dream would soon be fulfilled. Konosuba world. End of flashback. After the introduction of how Darkness will be able to fight the opponent he is assigned, let's continue. Now we can see how Darkness and Veldia clash swords with the purpose of destroying the other, a true cross between the best swordsman of the Demon King and the paladin trained by Sekiryuutei Hyoudou Issei himself, a true clash of titans. On the side of Darkness, she did everything possible to resist the relentless thrusts of Veldia, as well as his demonic eye technique, which put her in real trouble, because although it may not seem like it, Darkness despite Issei's training is still not as skillful with the sword as a mid-level swordsman reaching high, and to the misfortune of Darkness itself is added that she is facing a warrior who in life was one of the best swordsmen in the world. Now she had it difficult just to survive the battle, because only a small opening in her defense was needed and everything was over for the paladin, but she would not give up for anything in the world, and much less knowing that Axel along with her citizens are behind her, so falling was not even an option. And on Veldia's side it was a different matter. He only concentrated on attacking Darkness's blind spots, as if nothing were happening. That, added to the fact that his size was in his favor to overcome Darkness, made the fight easier for him, but without him or anyone around him knowing, Issei was seen with an increasingly furious face as he watched his partner being mercilessly wounded, and if one looks closely at his face, Issei's eyes were changing from one moment to another between blue and honey green, all because of the fury he was feeling at that moment, a fury that would become more than devastating when Veldia decides to try to finish off Darkness. And now returning to the fight of Darkness versus Veldia, this was almost decided because the Dullahan managed to corner the paladin with a descending cord which left her very badly injured, but of course, being a paladin and a masochist, she was able to withstand it quite well. However, she was very injured, but using her sword as support, she tried to get up. And as I said, he tried, but almost instantly due to the massive damage his body received, he ended up collapsing again to the ground, but this time completely, this seen by Issei, who was increasingly more and more furious, fury that was directed at Veldia, who was getting closer to Darkness with the purpose of finishing her off once and for all, of course, not without first saying a few final words of respect to the only rival in the entire city who could face him for quite some time. Veldia. To admit that I underestimated you, paladin. You showed me to be more capable than any adventurer in this city could demonstrate, and for that, and the fact that even at the cost of your own life, you protected the city and its villagers, I recognize you as a great warrior, so you can die in peace, knowing that with it the city will be saved. And so Veldia raised the sword with the purpose of decapitating Darkness, and when it was at the top, it fell as if it were in slow motion. The Dullahan's sword fell slowly, and this was seen by Issei, who when he saw that his partner and friend was about to die, remembered the short but pleasant time they shared. He remembered the embarrassing moments he spent with her, and that she caused the moments in which she showed her masochistic side, and how fun it was to see him, the pleasant moments of conversation they had, but above all, the memory. Her smile and her laugh, her way of cheering the brown-haired boy's heart with just a small gesture that seemed too charming to Issei, all the talks, all the training days, but above all the good times, which although they were very few, were some of the best he had ever experienced with Megumin and Kuoh, and at that moment he understood. Issei, thoughts. I see without realizing it you became very important people to me, people that I refused to let go. I thought this, and under no circumstances do I intend to allow it, and just when Veldia's sword was only centimeters from Darkness's neck, I will not allow you to die, I will not allow it no matter what happens. It happened. Throughout the place a monstrous aura was felt, one capable of rivaling the Demon King himself, an aura that was accompanied by an overwhelming killing intent, which it was safe to say was directed at Veldia in a very active way, who, upon feeling it, felt a chill that was more than overwhelming when he felt such power, a power that could overwhelm the Demon King himself, and when he turned to look, he saw Issei walking in the direction of the Dullahan, with his gaze lowered and his eyes covered by his hair. An image that would not be very intimidating if it were not for the aura that surrounded him being more than colossal to the point of flooding the entire battlefield, along with his killer instinct, which was focused on Veldia, who was trembling with fear for Issei's power, this being seen by a Kuoh, who knew that sensation was the power of the Sekiryuutei and the Hyoudou that were beginning to awaken in Issei, which made her very happy to see that she was finally able to activate her maximum power. Issei. Hey, what do you think you're doing? Issei said this with a deep voice almost as deep as that of a beast, or more specifically, like all the adventurers who together came to think of him as a monster, and with his aura becoming more and more monstrous to the point of making Veldia nervous because of the power that the chestnut-haired man himself possessed, which seemed to increase infinitely every second. In fact, Veldia, as well as the adventurers, swore for a second that they saw behind the brown-haired man the figure of two imposing and overwhelming dragons, two dragons with white and red scales, with eyes as blue as the ocean and eyes as green as emeralds, which in the image that was projected in Issei's aura, were almost ready to roar with all their might. This was until inside Issei the silhouettes of two dragons were shown that slowly opened their eyes, a sign of awakening, and with this the power of the brown-haired man increased more and more, and this was until he looked up and what was seen made everyone's blood run cold. Bruayarg. When Issei let his eyes be seen now flooded with rage and hatred towards Veldia, the two dragons that formed in his aura roared. They released their terrifying roar that was not only heard by each and every one of the inhabitants of Axel, as well as by Veldia himself, but with this roar the blood of all who heard the fury of the two dragons froze their blood. The children became so scared that most if not all began to cry, and their mothers and fathers comforted them, but still with great fear in their eyes. But for Veldia this was even worse, because when that roar reached his ears, for the brief instant that it lasted, thousands of images came to him from his own mind, images that showed the thousands of ways of his own death at the hands of the man in front of him. In Issei's gaze you could only distinguish three things: his enormous fury, his thirst for blood that would only be quenched by destroying the Dullahan in front of him, and an almost infinite hatred that promised unimaginable pain. This was accompanied by the fact that his power not only stabilized but also shot up completely and without restrictions, even leaving a little damage to Axel's wall, which was several meters from the battlefield, implying that he was at the maximum of his fury caused by Veldia when trying to kill darkness, something that he now regretted to the bottom of his soul, and even more so when Issei finally spoke. Issei. I will not allow it. His murderous instinct intensified with this phrase, but, hurt my darkness. This not only unnerved the adventurers when they felt the enormous fury in those words, but also left the Dullahan turned to stone with terror. But with the women present, it was a different matter. All of them without exception felt the feelings in those words, wishing to be the ones protected by such a man. Even darkness, for the first time, felt her heartbeat very fast, and it wasn't because of her masochistic side, but because of something else. Of course, she didn't know what it was about, but she was sure of something. It had to do with Issei, and she was determined to find out no matter what. While that was happening, and as if by magic, a blood-red glove with an emerald green jewel and wings as blue as the sky appeared on Issei's arm and back, which radiated a more than terrifying energy. That, added to Issei's own power, only meant one thing, and that was that Veldia was finished. Of course the Dullahan had it clear, but even so he would not run away with his tail between his legs. After all, this was what he had been waiting for, a fight to the death against a challenging warrior, and he would not let such an opportunity go, the opportunity to finally find his eternal rest just like that. So even with the fact that he would lose, and possibly in a humiliating way, he raised his sword and prepared for battle, all with the purpose of facing the light brown man. He, seeing Veldia's intentions even with his rage, decided to correspond with his own sword. Issei. Well Veldia, if you want a sword duel, then you will have Excalibur. Then Drake's voice resonates as he says blade, and a sword comes out of the glove, but this one was different. It was a sword that could be felt from afar, that it was sacred, but not just any sacred sword. Ignore the cover. The most sacred of swords, a sacred sword capable of even piercing the darkest of evils, or in simple terms a clash of titans, began on one side is the most powerful swordsman of the Demon King Veldia, the Dullahan ancient noble elite knight, and on the other side is Hyoudou Issei, the greatest hero that the world has known, to such an extent that he can even face the beast of the apocalypse, the Trihexa, alone and defeat him, even with his life to pay, and the clash of these two legends begins now. When they raised their swords and exchanged glances, the two rushed at each other, clashing their swords. Of course, this was a bit one-sided, since Issei barely made any effort to contain Veldia, while the Dullahan did everything possible to resist Issei's relentless power. Of course, even though he was on the verge of being overcome, he came up with an idea and put it into action. Surprisingly, he threw his head to the sky with the purpose of performing his technique, the Devil Eye, a special ability of his that allows him to have a vision of the entire field and in the process slow down the time of his opponents so that he obtains advantage during the battle. Of course, this against someone like Issei, who upon seeing how the technique or magic works as it is seen, decided to increase his movement speed to double and thus be able to face the body of the Dullahan on equal terms, to the astonishment of all observers. Seeing that his ace up his sleeve failed, he decided to use another of his trump cards by summoning a horde of undead that he sent against Issei, who was already prepared to face them all. But the Kuoh Issei-san, help me please. The horde of undead went against a Kuoh, basically ignored the orders of his master, who was humiliated, not what followed when he saw the little respect that his subordinates had for him, which by the way caused some laughter in Darkness and Megumin. Seeing such a scene, of course, Issei just eliminated them with a dragon shoot so as not to hear a Kuoh's pleas anymore and at the same time help her. Nobody said anything because apart from that interruption by a Kuoh, the fight was too serious. More was at stake than just the city. There was the honor of two great knights, along with the hopes they carried on their backs. On the one hand, the general of the Demon King Veldia the Dullahan, a knight who once faced the army of the Demon King himself and failed to defeat him, losing his life after being decapitated by the one who would be his lord in the future. Now, as a resurrected Dullahan, he serves as the greatest swordsman in the army of the Demon King and therefore carries on his back the expectations of his master that he imposed on him by resurrecting him. Therefore, despite knowing that he would die that day, he would do so with his sword in hand and with the honor of a knight. And on the other side was Hyoudou Issei, the prodigious adventurer of Axel, and the one who has become an example to follow for all, whether they are simple workers or experienced adventurers, because they lack something that Issei possessed and that inspired them to follow in his footsteps, and that was his unbreakable will, which inspires everyone around him to never give up. For that reason, he carries the hopes of every Axel that he will be the hero that protects them from the current calamity. The two at the time were praised as great heroes. Veldia, when he faced the army of the Demon King in the front of the battle to protect his kingdom and his people, and Issei, who gave everything of himself, even his life, to protect his loved ones from the threat of Trihexa as well as defend the world that he knew. Maybe on different scales, but both were heroes who died to protect what they loved the most, and only for that is that they can understand each other, because even being enemies they see themselves in each other. That is why this fight is only between them two and no one else. Veldia. Honestly, this is beyond my wildest imagination. I thought I would die for a powerful adventure, but being able to die at the hands of a legendary hero is something that is above all my expectations. I have to thank you, warrior, for offering me this last fight before perishing permanently. And I must say beforehand that it was an honor to have fought against you. Issei. Despite not knowing what you went through, Veldia, and despite the damage you caused to one of my loved ones, I can understand you as well as you. I also sacrificed myself for what I loved most, so as a last gesture of respect, I will finish you off with all the power I possess. I hope you don't mind that this is the end of our battle. At the end of the fight they were more than 100 meters apart at the two opposite ends. Hyoudou Issei and Veldia prepared for the other's final attack, and despite knowing clearly who would win the moment, he was too serious to say a single word. In fact, almost as if the world itself understood that the wind blew calmly but strong enough to wave both Issei's brown hair as well as Veldia's cape. Finally the fight would be decided with the last attack of the two same ones that they already prepared for, the final clash. Issei. Here I go, Veldia. I hope you are ready to leave this world forever, said the brown-haired man as he channeled all his power into his sacred sword, which by Issei's unbreakable will seemed to shine with its own light, even forming a pillar of it which radiated above all power, but also warmth and security, the same one that guaranteed that whatever happened they would not have to fear because their hero would protect them. Remember this, Veldia, the name of the warrior who will destroy you. I am Hyoudou Issei, and I promise you that this is your end. That enormous column of light was at its maximum point when it suddenly disappeared, and all that was seen was how Issei's sword shone almost as much as the sun itself, implying that all the power that was created in that column was now in the sword, ready to give its final blow against the Dullahan who prepared his final attack, the very manifestation of all his power delivered by the Demon King himself. Veldia, I can promise you that I will never forget that name, so come to me, warrior Hyoudou Issei, because I, like you, will respond to your unbreakable will with all my power. This will be the last clash because from here only one of us will come out alive. Were the words of Veldia as he channeled all the power that he possessed in his being, both the power he achieved in life, as well as the one that the Demon King granted him when he made him his servant in general. All that power went directly to his sword, which, due to the massive amount of aura that was inserted into it, came to change shape to one even more sinister and evil than the previous one. The sword that represented everything about himself now appeared, but now he could not afford to give it a name. That is why for him it was only the sword of the Demon King, as it represented his link with him. Both sides were ready, all their power was in their last attack. Whatever happened in this clash, only one would survive, while the other would be destroyed. When they rushed at each other with the sole purpose of destroying the other, time seemed to go in slow motion. A single second felt like an eternity for the two. Each step they took seemed like it was eternal, the margin until taking the next one, while for the adventurers who witnessed the battle, everything happened in an instant. As if they were two lightning bolts, Veldia and Issei rushed towards each other with their best attacks. The only thing that could be seen was the trail they left behind them. They were almost like two imposing and powerful arrows, one as golden and bright as the sun itself, which radiated purity at its highest point, and the other an arrow as dark as eternal night itself. But the feeling it transmitted was not one of evil, but that of the will of a great warrior, ready to give it his all. The two in just thousandths of a second were already in front of each other with their swords ready, and then the powerful voice of the two warriors resounded, implying that their attacks finally collided. Issei, Veldia. Excalibur. Great Dark Throttle. The voices of Issei and Veldia resounded while around them only the great power generated by the clash of powers was seen looking towards the battlefield, of which now only a great crater remained. Only an intense light was seen that blinded each and every one of the adventurers. In that light the golden color predominated, but the dark flashes were not so scarce, implying that all the energy released by the clash of powers of Veldia and Issei still remained in the place, and it would be a little more time before the imposing light finally diminished and revealed the result of that clash of powers. When finally the tireless light became more pronounced as well as the dust that rose became more pronounced, the result of that clash of powers could be seen, and as everyone predicted, Issei, the great adventurer of Axel, was the winner of that encounter, because in the crater, only Issei could be seen with his sword in his left hand, which seemed to still retain a bit of that golden light, while yellow rays covered the blade of the sword evenly. And on the ground, totally destroyed and almost lifeless in his body, was Veldia, totally defeated, his sword to one side, shattered by the gigantic force with which he collided, and above all, his head was next to him. Now it is only a matter of giving the final blow, and everything will end, is what each adventurer thought with great joy upon seeing that the fight was finally over, but the reality was different. Because even though it didn't seem like it, Veldia was now making a monumental effort just to maintain the little life that was still left in his body, because he knew it was a matter of stopping resisting death, and just like his body, his soul would finally find its long-awaited eternal rest, but that still couldn't be because he still had some final words for his executioner, so Veldia, with the last of his power, decided to say his last words that only Issei could hear. Veldia. So th is the right broken ahahaha cough really that you were too much for me, but at least I can leave this world cough like a warrior. I have to thank you, it was in fact the best fight of my life cough and a worthy end for me. Were the few words that barely came out of the dying Veldia, who in each word he tried his best just to be able to mention them, and even so Issei listened very attentively, because he knew that the rival he faced deserved at least to say his last words before dying, and it was something that he agreed to grant him, because it was the minimum final respect he could have for a warrior of Veldia's stature. Veldia. Listen to me Hyoudou Issei of all the Demon King's generals, I was only the 7th most powerful, that's why I have to tell you this, if your wishes to end the Demon King awaits you a much more difficult path than you imagine, that is why Hyoudou Issei entrusts you with my last wish cough, you have to end him, please end the Demon King, make sure he is destroyed please. It was the request of one warrior to another. Veldia only wanted his last wish to be fulfilled, but he himself could not do it, but seeing Issei when contemplating his power Veldia was sure of something. If in this world there was a man capable of ending the Demon King forever, it was Hyoudou Issei. That is why at least before disappearing forever, he wished that someone else inherit his will to bring peace to the world that he when he lived, he strived so hard to protect and for his luck. Issei. I promise you that it will be like this Veldia no matter what happens. I will be the one to destroy the Demon King at all costs. That is my promise. The will to achieve peace, for this war to end forever, came to the right person, because Issei would make sure that the world that is now his home reaches peace no matter what happens. Veldia said nothing more, but if someone could see inside his helmet he was smiling at the end. His body began to evaporate into simple particles of light, all contemplated by each of Axel's adventurers who were in total silence, because finally the battle ended, and when finally all the adventurers were ready to celebrate the screams flooded the silent helmet, and they were not screams of joy. Issei. That scream belonged to Issei's companions who were almost horrified because the brown-haired man who until now remained calm was now fainted against the ground, agonizing in pain due to the excessive expenditure of energy that he made by releasing all his power suddenly, and now this action was taking its toll on him. Therefore Kuoh, in view of everything that happened, he quickly decided to revive all the adventurers who were killed by Veldia, while he rushed to attend to Issei, because the damage he suffered was something very dangerous, without knowing that such a release of power would bring more consequences than those witnessed, and Issei, Kuoh, Megumin and Darkness were not long away from finding out those consequences. Apt dimensions at the same time. We finally found him, were the words that came out of the mouth of a certain brunette dressed in a pink jacket and inside it a black t-shirt with a blue X and a skirt of the same color with heart details. And you can say that, but what I'm wondering is how the hell he got to that place. I sincerely hope he doesn't get into trouble, were the words of a red-haired man with short hair and eyes with dark sclera and a golden glow. And what does that matter, Baka Red? What really matters is that we have finally found my dear Issei, so you better shut your mouth, or else I will shut it myself, were the threatening words of the black-haired loli to the poor Reupload, who was now trembling a little because of the threat, as it brought back certain very unpleasant memories. Red. Okay, I'll shut up now, but please calm down Office, after all I still don't want to die. Was what the man now known as Red said to the girl known as Office, who despite having an impassive face her aura said from all sides that she was ready to kill the first poor devil who dared to cross her path or even get into her field of vision. By the way, this is how Office is dressed just as I described before. And this is what Red looks like, and honestly this style suits her in her human form. Office. By the way, Red, can I ask you a question? Office said this, to which Red saw the opportunity to lighten the mood with a joke, but before saying even one thing, don't even think about saying you already did it, or else I'll first chain you up hand and foot, then with a sledgehammer I'll crush what makes you a man for a consecutive hour, and in the end, I'll rip it out with a spoon and without any kind of anesthesia, and when I've finally ripped it out, I'll make you swallow it. Now Red was trembling with fear. He may be strong even more than Office normally, but against a furious Office in love, he doesn't even have the slightest chance, and wanting to not experience such punishment, he decided not to say what he was going to say. Red. Tell me Office what's going on, said Ren half dying of fear for the punishment that almost awaited him. Office. Why the hell did you dress in such a weird way? Was Office's question, which in her own opinion the clothes that Red wore did not suit her at all. Red. What do you mean Office, how can you say that? It's more than obvious that these clothes fit me, as if they were made just for me, can't you notice that? Was what Red said, who offended by Office's question. Apart from having thrown a tantrum at the dragon's comment, he even made several model poses while talking, something that was driving the black-haired girl crazy, who in her mind had already devised 50 new torture methods, and in front of her was already her guinea pig, unless the idiot shuts up. Office. For a full minute Office remained silent because she was desperately trying to remain calm in the face of Red's extremely ridiculous act, which in the end she failed and ended up giving her ultimatum. Not only do you dress like some kind of jester, but on top of that you act even worse than Seraphol Leviathan, and on top of that you don't even have the decency to recognize that you are dressed like a clown. Without a doubt you are the biggest idiot that I have ever met, Red, and only because I know that your pea-sized brain will not understand it, otherwise I will say it loud and clear. After taking some air, Office finally gave her last warning. If you do something so shameful again as to lower the respect that we both have for our titles, besides dressing in such a deplorable way, I swear Red that I plan to try the most recent methods of psychological and physical torture that Akeno recommended to me. So if you don't want that to happen to you, you better keep quiet, or else, well, I don't think I have to say it, do I? That last thing was said by Office with a voice that would scare even Hades himself, and in Red the effect was even greater, so now the poor guy was trembling on the ground in the fetal position, just imagining the cruel tortures that awaited the poor guy if he dared to make Office angry. Issei has fainted on the battlefield while suffering from great pain. Kuoh, Darkness and Megumin went to help him. Office and Great Red finally found Issei. What does the future hold for Issei? That and more in the next chapter of Issei in Konosuba Chapter 5. Wiz in the creation of the dragon pieces. Don't miss it. Chapter 5. Wiz the dragon pieces, and what's up with this girl who's crazy about friends? Axel Hospital. Exactly 3 weeks have passed since that confrontation between Hyoudou, Issei the adventurer, and Veldia the Dullahan, in which the brown-haired man managed to release the dormant power within him of the 2 celestial dragons, thus achieving a victory that at first glance seemed impossible and subsequently fainting from overexertion. During the following days, both Kuoh, Megumin and Darkness have not separated from the boy, who giving everything saved their lives from an imminent death at the hands of that general of the Demon King. A way of thanking him was what they said to themselves, only to try to ignore what they felt for him at that moment and what they came to develop when seeing him fight beyond his limits. The Kuoh, after healing Issei's wounds, decided to give him daily treatment so that he could recover as quickly as possible from his current state, even going so far as to not drink a single drop of alcohol, focusing purely on said treatment, all in the hope that Issei would wake up soon. She still felt somewhat guilty for having been more of a nuisance in that battle, because not only could she not help in the fight against the Dullahan, despite the fact that the undead are her specialty, but on top of that she ended up being chased by them for an hour and later saved by Issei. The Kuoh knew that the role assigned to her in the group was that of a healer, being an archpriest, and thanks to her class and the very few divine powers she still retained, she could perform that role magnificently, but in other roles, she was unable to contribute anything, and that frustrated her. Despite her frustration, she knew that if she didn't want to continue being a burden, she had to, above all, strive to better fulfill her role as a healer, avoiding danger and not being a burden to her group again. That was what Kuoh had promised herself while she continued her treatment on her Issei companion. Megumin, after seeing the state her teammate was in, after facing the responsibilities generated by her use of her beloved explosion magic, as well as her stubbornness to learn other magic just because of her passion for explosions, seriously reconsidered what she should do. After all, she had indirectly been responsible for hurting the first people who had accepted her. Built aided her inside, she was in fact responsible for that invasion, all for refusing any magic other than explosion. Now she was paying the price of her own foolishness, one of her friends wounded almost to the point of death and her first friend, as well as the first person to accept her in a coma after defeating Veldia. The option she had to make was obvious but painful. Either she continued being the burden she had been since she joined Issei's group, or she matured once and for all and deigned to learn another type of magic, despite the fact that what she had to do was obvious. It hurt her to put aside what she had worked so hard to achieve. She had already failed her loved ones once with her younger sister. She would not repeat the same mistake twice. That's why Megumin decided to leave Axel for a couple of days to completely clear her mind, make peace with herself, and finally take the step she should have taken a long time ago, finally learn new magic beyond explosion. As for Darkness, she is in fact the one who has been thinking the most about everything that had happened in the fight against Veldia, not just the fact that despite her best efforts, Veldia completely surpassed her in every possible aspect. Fencing, defense, attack, resistance, agility, skill and experience, in all of them she was surpassed due to her own weakness, and if it weren't for the sudden increase in power of her teammate, Axel would be just a pile of smoking ruins and its corpses decorating the streets of the city of rookies today. She could only feel guilty for not having been capable enough to stand up to Veldia. Despite the praise she received for having endured so much against him, she did not feel deserving of said praise, because as a paladin, she should be everyone's shield, and even in that she failed, and if she was still alive today, it was only because of her teammate, who without hesitating twice jumped forward and faced the Dullahan alone. After her guilt, she also felt great relief when she saw how her partner defeated the general of the Demon King, but also a lot of shame after hearing him shout, "Nobody touches my darkness." Luna and Chris especially enjoyed making fun of her after that, so she decided to stay somewhat away from the guild to be able to reflect on things. She was currently weak, she knew that, and it became even clearer to her in her confrontation against Veldia, in which she could barely resist a few of his blows with his sword, all thanks to the training that Issei forced her to endure. Now she was grateful for that, because if it weren't for those days of teaching at the hands of the brown-haired man, she would only be another victim of the Dullahan Veldia, but that only served to further strengthen her determination. As for the citizens of Axel, they were still celebrating in honor of Issei and his group, who saved them from the Demon King's army, specifically from one of his generals, and although they wished him to recover soon, they knew that the most they could do was wait for their hero to wake up and decorate him as he deserved. And as for Issei, what was going on that he still hadn't woken up? Let's find out. Issei's mental space. Issei Pav. I've been here inside my own head for 3 days now, and yes, I know you're wondering why I haven't returned. It's simple, I've been here inside serving as a mediator between Drake and Albion, who haven't stopped arguing and fighting since I awakened the boosted gear and divine dividing, and honestly, I'm already getting tired of all this. Anyway, I can finally see that those two came to some sort of strategic agreement only after I threatened to spread their embarrassing nicknames of Sekiryuutei and Kitsuriku in this world, after which they agreed that as long as they don't use their powers at the same time, unless it's the last resort, like it was against Veldia, they would stop trying to kill each other, something I sincerely appreciate. After negotiating, blackmailing, with Drake and Albion, I decided to update the two of them about everything that had happened after my third death after killing Trihexa. They were not surprised by the fact that I was reincarnated in another world, although it seems that was because they already knew about other worlds, although their explanation was with you, that is the most normal thing, I don't know why, but at that moment I felt like skinning the two of them. You can't imagine how much time I had to spend calming myself down by counting the prime numbers. Anyway, after finally reaching an agreement with these two idiot dragons, they told me something quite important that they recently discovered in my body when I became the first and perhaps only bearer of the two celestial dragons. Drake. Leaving aside your threat, partner, we should move on to more serious matters. The brown-haired man could only nod at what his friend said, because if he was serious it was because he really was. You'll see how you will know, partner, after your death at the hands of Shalba, you will remember that your original body had been destroyed, and with it all traces of your old attempt to copy the power of Albion present here, remember? Issei. How to forget it, the moment in which we closed Volley and Albion's mouths, without offending Albion. I could see Albion nod with a somewhat amused face. I think he still remembers how he reacted when I achieved the impossible, stealing some of his power, but what's so important about that exactly, Drake? Maybe now he's the bearer of Albion, but you're not going to say that now every time I use dividing my vitality will decrease, right? Drake. Calm down, buddy, that won't happen. After all, that goddess who accompanies you will surely have explained to you why you couldn't access our power as soon as you arrived in this world, and that's how it happened. Because Akwai had explained to me that because Drake and Albion were synchronizing in my body so I wouldn't explode with power, I couldn't use any of my sacred gears. Drake. What I wanted to tell you is about the power of office that lives inside you, which as you know, my friend, thanks to the Diabolos God Dragon armor, you can temporarily have the power of infinity, but due to the enormous pressure it exerted on you, you couldn't maintain it for long. Issei. Yes, I know I'm too weak to withstand Office's power, that's been repeated to me more than 1 million times, what are you getting at Dreg? Dreg. Certainly that was how it was before, but remember your previous condition, you had been reincarnated into a true dragon by Great Red, and Office, of course you were still classified as a newborn, the brown-haired boy understood that, because in theory Great Red when giving him his new body did so by returning him to a state of a dragon cub, now when you were reincarnated in this world, your body was artificially matured to an adolescent state. And with it your powers I suppose I shouldn't say more so you understand what I mean. Issei. So you're saying that when I was transported to this strange world, the powers that I couldn't handle before due to lack of control and physical maturity, I can now control them efficiently. Albion. Not exactly Hyoudou Issei, interrupted the white dragon to the brown-haired boy, who decided to listen to what he had to say. If that were the case, then Vali at your current age of 17 years old would already have perfect control of his demonic powers, derived from his Lucifer blood, but as you know he trained for years to learn to manifest and control them to a certain extent at will, that is also your case. Greg. It's like Albion says, buddy, it's possible that you now have better control over Office's infinite power, since it is matured within you, but as such you have zero control over it, after all you didn't control the boosted gear when you manifested it the first time. Okay, that's true, when I just manifested my powers I didn't master them at all, in fact it wasn't until I had trained for 10 days with Rias and the others in the mountains that I learned the most basic things about boosted gear, and that I was able to control a fraction of its true power, and even to this day, I'm sure that I haven't unraveled all its secrets, if I consider Kuoh's pseudo-balance breaker as an example of how unpredictable the Longinus are. Issei. So, what you two are telling me is that now, in addition to understanding the capabilities of dividing, I must now train my control of Office's power of infinity. That's something I never thought would happen. I mean, I'm happy that from now on, every time I use the power of infinity, my body won't be in such a state that I have to ask a Kuoh to heal me, but this is ridiculous. Albion. Unfortunately, more bad news is added to that list, Hyoudou Issei. Seriously, do you have something against me or what? Albion. As you know, your current body, being one based on Great Red, also possesses its own power, which you must also control, having matured with you in this world transition. Issei. Great, anything else I should know? I could see how Dreg and Albion shook their heads, I guess that's a relief. Well, to recap, due to my rebirth in this world, in addition to the fact that I must defeat 7 more generals who serve the demon king of this world, I also have to master the power of infinity, that of Great Red, the sword Excalibur and dividing, am I forgetting something? Dreg. In fact, partner, you forget the fact that one of those 7 generals that you must defeat, and from what I can feel, one of the most powerful is inside Axel infiltrated, is seriously one of the most powerful. Now this really could not get any worse than it already is honestly, and also that very soon the news of your victory over Veldia will not take long to reach the ears of both the Demon King and the royalty, and I guess I should not explain to you what that means. And why you should do it, Dreg, it's pretty obvious in the end, and don't even think I don't notice your sarcastic tone. Issei. Obviously not, the fire-breathing lizard, when the Demon King finds out what I did to Veldia, he'll probably send one of his most powerful generals after my head. I think Dreg is upset about what I told him, but he deserved it because of how he made fun of me, calling me stupid, believing that I didn't know what would happen to me from now on. Issei. And on the other hand, once the king and the nobility of this world know what I did with Veldia, they will probably name me a hero by sending me to the front of the battle to try to finish off the Demon King without being sufficiently prepared for that battle, which would only mean my death. Honestly, I know I usually have good luck considering how my life has gone, whether it's with women or avoiding permanent death, but today I think the goddess of fortune has finally abandoned me. You only have to look at all the bad news that's coming out right now. Issei. Damn, and the worst thing is that I don't have much time at all. I mean, at most I have a few weeks before either the Demon King or royalty intervene. It's a fact that I'm doomed. Dreg. Not entirely, my friend, was what Dreg said in a lively tone. He rarely uses that tone, and when he does, it's for a good reason. As you say, my friend, you have at most a few weeks before the problems arrive, but that doesn't mean you don't have time. Issei. And now what the hell are you talking about? Dreg? 3 to 4 weeks is not enough even to control in a basic way the power of infinity and sleep, and not to mention the dividing. Dreg. Normally I would agree with you, partner, but now with Albion here we can get more time. That really confused me, because getting more time sounds stupid. What Albion and I planned for your training was to slow down time here in your mind with our magic. Albion. What Dreg says is basically our plan of action to buy more time, an extreme slowdown here will give you enough time to understand the power of Office and Great Red as well as mine. That does sound good, but wait, because now they mention it, there must be a trick behind it, I'm sure. Issei. That sounds good and all, but answer me now, you two fools, what exactly is the trap? I think I offended you, but despite that, I see that you're still planning to tell me, based on your looks, and that you understand what kind of mood I'm in. Greg. We should leave you with a doubt, but we can't allow it. Well, it's true there are risks with this method of mental training. I knew it, as you know, partner, every living being in existence has a unique perception of time, from the most insignificant being to the largest monster. What this training does is slow down your perception of time itself by decreasing the pace of it here in your mind compared to the outside. That for a few hours to a maximum of 2 days is harmless, but after that period of time is when the side effects caused by the atrophy of your perception of time arrive. In short, it would be the same as trapping myself in a time loop from which I cannot escape no matter what I do, which would cause my perception of time to be messed up to such a degree that I couldn't even say what day I am on. That honestly sounds dangerous for my sanity. Albion. For that same reason you will only do this training for a maximum of 3 years here inside, because that is the maximum you could currently endure in your current state. That at least is good news. The fact that I will only be stuck training for 3 years calmed me down a bit, but remember, this training is only to control the latent power inside you and nothing more. Issei. Well, I think with that said, how much time will be spent outside while I train here exactly? I know that maybe I shouldn't worry, but I would still like to know when I will wake up. The last thing I want is to worry Megumin, darkness, and a Kuoh more than necessary by being unconscious for too long. Greg. A maximum of 3 weeks, my friend. Okay, I didn't expect that. I thought it would be something like Dragon Ball and its time warp, in which 1 year is a day away, but from what I see, that won't be the case. And stop comparing this to that damn fighting anime, my friend. After all, it's more advisable that you spend some time away from your mind so that your body can adapt to the power that you'll be training in here, even if it's just a little. Albion. I hate to say it, Hyoudou, but Drake is right. If we are not careful with this training method, there is a possibility that once you wake up and try to use the power of infinity or sleep, your body will not be able to control it and explode in the end. It is your mind that submits to the training, not your body. Well, that makes more sense. After all, it's not the same thing for your mind to adapt to the power as for your body to get used to it. Now I can understand why at least 3 weeks must pass outside. That will at least give me time to adapt at least a little to the power of Office and Great Red. After that, my brutal training began. I won't bore you with the details, but I can tell you about my training routine. The first year I dedicated myself entirely to power control, and I must say it was hell. I subjected myself to all kinds of meditations, energy control exercises, as well as the use of spells, using not my own power reserves, but the power of infinity and sleep. I will only say that my first attempt was a total disaster. I had never seen a magic circle explode like that. Anyway, after the first year in which I dedicated myself 24/7 solely to controlling my power, I was finally able to manifest it and control it in a very efficient way. I won't say perfect. After all, for that, it is necessary that I also practice control training with my body. Otherwise, my power would only become a burden too heavy to bear. That is why, as soon as I get out of here, I will dedicate myself to my energy control training. In the second year I dedicated myself to understanding the complete functioning of my new powers, and I'm not exaggerating when I say all of them. It turns out that Office and Great Red didn't bother to tell me that by giving me part of their powers, they also gave me their corresponding abilities, and there weren't a few, to be precise. Regarding Office's power, I discovered that she had a total of 8 skills, of which I could only obtain 3, while the other 5 required physical training, but I'm not complaining because what I obtained was very good too. The first ability I obtained was Infinity Spirit, which in short is Office's innate ability that prevented her from getting tired unless her energy was stolen, and luckily for me I obtained it when I was at 100% of my total capacities, but unlike Office, for now I can only use it to fully recover at most 2 times. After all, I don't have much infinity energy inside me. The second was Infinite Magic. I don't think it's necessary to say what it's about, but in case it's not clear, with this ability I gain access to the powerful magic of infinity, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it. Honestly, it's not very useful to me since I'm not specialized in magic, but I'm sure it will be wonderful for Megumin, even more so with the unique quality of this ability, Divine Regeneration, that will recharge her mana instantly. Although of course it only works on highly intelligent magicians, a requirement that Megumin meets and then some despite her attitude and obsession with explosions. The last ability from Office that I was able to obtain was Hyper-Accelerated Thinking. In this case, and as its name suggests, it is an ability that allowed Office to process things around her up to 1,000,000 times faster than an average person, but due to the few battles she had throughout her life, according to Drake and Albion at least, Office herself surely forgot that she had this powerful ability. But well, she surely got a good use out of this ability when it was necessary to devise last-second plans, which with my current group is almost always. As for the rest of the skills, I still don't know their names, but I'm sure they're geared toward physical improvement as well as hand-to-hand combat, so I'm sure I'll soon find out what they are and how they work. As for Great Red's abilities, I must be thankful that all of his abilities are mental and magical, but unfortunately I was only able to obtain 4 from him. The first one I obtained was the so-called Dream Avatar. I don't think I need to explain it, but in short this ability allows me to create a clone of myself in the real world that I control. This same clone has all my physical abilities, but few magical ones, and one of its requirements for use is that the user is in a state of deep sleep, therefore it is counterproductive to use it unless it is an emergency. The second ability of Great Red that I got was Dream Magic. It works the same as Infinite Magic, giving me access to the Dream Magic that Great Red mastered, but unfortunately I can't give this power to Megumin. After all, Dream Magic and Infinite Magic are incompatible with each other, so I must seriously consider recruiting another magician for the team. I was also able to get one of his most powerful abilities, Perfect Dream. The ability basically consists of trapping his targets in hyper-realistic dreams, to the point that if you die in that dream you die in real life. Above all, the one who controls that dream is the user of the ability. Honestly, I don't think I'll use this ability very often, but I still won't rule it out completely. By the way, don't tell Drake, but once I decided to use that ability on him to make him suffer a little with Tiamat, since then I see him somewhat paranoid, but well, I think it's not something serious. And the last of my new abilities from Great Red was Reality Control. I think it's not necessary to explain it honestly, but just in case, this ability allows me to create separate spaces similar to pocket dimensions in which I control everything around me, including living beings. In short, rewrite reality. That was actually the hardest of all my new skills to master. It took me a total of 3 whole months to grasp it, and that's considering I'm here training 24/7 non-stop, so I think you can get an idea of how much conventional training time it took me to master this skill to a decent degree. After that came my third and final year of training, in which I decided to dedicate myself exclusively to perfecting my control of my god dragon Diabolos, with the purpose of stopping the same thing from happening to me every time I used it, because honestly, I had had enough of the whole issue of always ending up almost dead every time I used it. I won't say for a fact that it was easy to perfect the Diabolos god dragon, but at least I was able to solve the problem of why I was mortally wounded every time I used it. It turns out that due to the immature infinite element in my body, the armor self-destructed every time I put it on, since I wasn't yet used to the infinite element of the Diabolos god dragon, but luckily, as my body matured, the infinite element stopped being a problem when using my most powerful armor, which I am grateful for. As for perfecting my armor, it turned out to be more difficult than I thought, but I made some progress because now, thanks to having achieved greater mastery of my Diablo's god dragon, I was now able to maintain it for a minimum of 35 minutes at maximum power, which was already enormous progress if I consider the base I started from before coming to this world. That was the end of my training here, because according to Drake and Albion, even if I stayed here longer I wouldn't make any more progress, because what I was missing now was experience with my body to complete my training with my new powers, something I decided to do as soon as possible. Of course, before returning to the real world, they warned me one last time about the general of the Demon King's army, and that I shouldn't look for trouble with him or her, something I preferred to avoid as much as possible, but knowing my luck, it's possible that I'll run into said general a few days after waking up. And so my hellish 3-year mental training ended, but what I didn't know was that it was just a prelude to everything the future held for me. Issei. Axel's nursing. In one of the infirmary rooms located in the Axel Guild, there were 2 people, one on one of the stretchers and the other sitting next to the first. These people were none other than Issei and Kuoh, who for obvious reasons were in that place. Issei. So she stayed by my side taking care of me all this time, was what Issei commented when he saw how Kuoh seemed to have barely moved from that chair in what seemed like weeks, clearly accepting basic needs like food and personal hygiene. I appreciated Kuoh. Trying to stand up, Issei felt his body somewhat stiff, something normal if you consider the time he was in a coma, added to the wear and tear his body was experiencing after his mental training, which was taking its toll. Issei thoughts as Drake and Albion said this pain and fatigue are no small thing. Honestly, if this is only 10% of my total mental training, I don't want to imagine how much I would suffer if I had received 100% of the physical conditioning. The boy thought as he got up from the bed he had been lying in until recently. Looking more closely at the place, Issei realized that the place he was in fact Axel's hospital, so he only came to one conclusion. Issei. It's most likely that Kuoh Darkness and Megumin would insist on treating me here, prioritizing my own safety over expenses. I don't even want to imagine the bill that will fall on the 4 of us, was Issei's comment when imagining the amount of Agares they would charge him for 3 weeks of treatment at the city hospital. I just hope that they at least pay us something for finishing off Veldia. Once Issei finished equipping himself with his trench coat and armor, he was preparing to wake Kuoh up so that she could tell him where Darkness and Megumin were, but he happened to notice something next to his bed. A beautiful sword that shone with golden light. Issei, thoughts? This is, if I remember correctly, the Excalibur sword that I asked for when my 3 wishes were granted at the beginning of all this, a legendary sword which had one of the most tragic background stories, not only for what it came to represent, but what it lost. Issei, thoughts? I still remember when Azazel-sensei told me everything about Excalibur and how it ended up dividing into several fragments. If I remember correctly, it was something like that. When a queen pretending to be a king lost proof of her right to the throne, torn to pieces in her own hands, a beautiful lady who lived in a sacred lake appeared to the queen, offering her a new sword as well as a beautiful scabbard for it. The queen who pretended to be a king called Arturia Pendragon, that same day from the Lady of the Lake, had received a beautiful and powerful sword with a blue handle and a golden guard. That sword bore the name of the Sword of Promised Victory Excalibur, along with its sheath, the always distant Utopia Avalon. That sword, as its name indicated, offered its bearer victory with devastating and limitless power. The sword was unrivaled, as was the sheath, which would be immortal as long as its bearer possessed it. Together they created the perfect knight, the King of Knights. After countless battles, the worst of all would come for the King of Knights, the Battle of Camlan, which would mark the end of an era. It turns out that one of the most faithful knights of the Round Table in the service of Arturia Mordred was actually a homunculus created by the witch Morgana Le Fay, with the sole purpose of destroying the King of the Knights and recovering the throne that she believed belonged to her by right. When Mordred rebelled against Arturia, she denied him what the knight believed was rightfully his, which is why he would end up rebelling against the king, against his father, and claiming by force the throne that he fervently believed was rightfully his. This rebellion would end in Camlan, where the final confrontation between the King of Knights and the now nicknamed Knight of Betrayal would take place. Not only was it a fight between knights, but, although the king did not want to admit it, a fight between father and son. After the final battle and the King of Knights killing the Knight of Betrayal, it was at that very moment that the king for the first time doubted his own beliefs and values when he saw what these same beliefs forced him to do. That day, the bearer of the promised victory, the crystallization of hope, had lost his own hope in everything he had once believed in. After that, the constant battles, wars, rebellions and subsequent betrayals that the king faced after Camlan were exhausting for both his body and his own soul, to the point that on one occasion the king even lost faith in his own kingdom. At the end of his life, after countless internal battles, conspiracies, rebellions and wars, the one who had once been the King of the Knights had been reduced to a gloomy and finished shadow of his former self, all because he was never able to trust those closest to him. All of his most trusted knights, buried defending the kingdom they swore loyalty to, or traitors who longed for the throne, his once strong and trustworthy people with an unbreakable will, now divided, weak and fragile. That was the end of an era, the end of the kingdom of Camelot. But the king still refused to give up and kept fighting, with the purpose of defending his people and his kingdom. Even though she already knew it, she refused to accept it. She refused to accept that she was only prolonging the inevitable, the fall of everything for which she shed so much blood, sweat and tears, because despite everything she was still the King of Knights, and as long as the light of the promised victory shone, she would never give up. And it was at the end of his life that the unimaginable happened, as the light that had once shone brightly in his precious Excalibur went out. Or well, it would be more accurate to say that the light that represented the power of Excalibur fragmented and divided, leaving its container completely empty. After that, and with the fall of Camelot, some decades later, the church found the fragments of Excalibur's power, which they converted with very high-level alchemy, considered practically miraculous, into 7 new swords named Excalibur, all based on their unique qualities. Excalibur rapidly. As I recall, beyond the sacred power derived from possessing a part of the power of the original Excalibur, that sword only granted a speed increase to its wielder, something useful when we talk about master swordsmen. Excalibur Mimic. I know a lot about Mimic, not for nothing was my childhood friend its bearer. From what I heard, Mimic had the ability to change shape at the user's will, as he had previously done with Arena when she turned into a katana. Excalibur Nightmare. There isn't much to say about this sword beyond its power to create ultra-realistic illusions and the control it is capable of exerting on the dreams of its victims, something terrifying but nothing too serious if you are good enough, or in my case you have someone who disperses the illusions. Excalibur Destruction. There is little more to say about this sword beyond its enormous destructive power, which is in fact its only notable quality. I only remember when Zenobia used it to kick the butt of Akiba blinded by rage, and briefly her fight against a Cerberus, as well as the crazy Freed who carried an incomplete Excalibur, the result of Valpur's experiments. Excalibur Ruler. As its name indicates, it allows total control against anyone who is affected by this sword. For that same reason it was called the most powerful Excalibur, and with good reason, because for its manufacture the largest and purest fragment of the power of the original Excalibur was used. Excalibur transparency. Little to say beyond the fact that it makes both the user and the blade of the sword completely invisible to the human eye, as the King of Knights was once able to do by covering Excalibur in a cloak of wind so that his opponents would be unable to tell what type of weapon he was wielding. Excalibur blessing. As I recall, it is in fact the weakest of the 7 fragments of Excalibur, offensively speaking, but it was the best support weapon of the church, using it to both empower its exorcists as well as weaken its enemies, as long as they were demons or vampires. And then there is the original Excalibur that I now possess. It is not an amalgamation of the previous 7 swords and their unified powers or a bad fusion, but the genuine sword of promised victory, the so-called most powerful sacred sword Excalibur, along with its legendary scabbard, the ever-distant Utopia Avalon. Issei, thoughts. The best of all is that, thanks to it being one of my rewards in this world for all my heroic acts before dying, because of that damn 7-headed phenomenon, Excalibur as well as Avalon recognize me almost as if I were the great King of Knights, even though I am not him. After finally putting his thoughts together, Issei decided on his course of action, starting with waking up the priestess still asleep in the chair next to him. Issei. Well, it's time. Preparing to release a good scream, Issei gathered some air in his lungs, and then his voice echoed throughout the place. How long more are you supposed to remain asleep, you lazy goddess? That powerful scream was heard not only in the Adventurers Guild, but also in the streets of Axel nearby. In fact, its intensity was such that even some windows were broken by the noise, as well as the eardrums of many poor unfortunate people who were passing by at that moment. And in the process he was able to scare the hell out of a certain archpriest who was asleep just a second ago. The Kuoh. Why the Demon King is attacking us, everyone takes cover. After the initial scare, Kuoh was able to analyze her surroundings, and after seeing a certain brown-haired man with green eyes standing next to her with a somewhat serious look, she only managed to sigh. Seriously, what the hell Issei have in your head to wake me up like that? Do you have any idea how long I've been watching over you here since you fainted? Issei. Apparently enough to even bring me to the city hospital. Do you have at least a minimal idea of how much the bill will cost once they finally discharge me? At that, Kuoh only managed to put on a somewhat mocking smile on her face. What is that damn smile of yours for, lazy goddess? The Kuoh. From what I see you don't know, right? Issei just sent him a death glare that said, he was fainted. What do you think, which scared a Kuoh to death? Or forget what I said. Very true, after you finished off Eldia and you fainted, Lunas and the receptionist told us all that. Because of what you did, the guild offered to cover all the medical expenses. Now what do you have to say about it? Even though Issei didn't like a Kuoh's arrogant tone, he was still grateful for having saved a few thousand eris in medical bills, even more so knowing that with a goddess capable of resurrecting the dead with her healing magic at his side, he didn't want to waste money in vain, but he was still grateful to see that that wouldn't be the case. Issei. I see, in that case I'll ask another question. Do you know where the hell Megumin and Darkness are? I don't see them anywhere, and I hardly feel their presence in Axel. The Kuoh. Well, from what I heard from those two, they feel very guilty about what happened to you after your fight against Veldia, so they decided to improve as much as possible. Darkness with her sword skills and Megumin with her magic. I think that today or tomorrow they will have finished their training. Issei didn't expect that. He knew very well that it was possible that Megumin and Darkness felt somewhat useless after the battle against Veldia, especially Megumin being in fact one of the two responsible for that Dullahan attacking Axel. But Darkness didn't understand him. After all, as a great paladin, she defended all of Axel's adventurers and civilians by facing Veldia head-on. At that moment, Issei decided that he would have a very serious talk with Darkness about his own self-esteem. Issei. I see, so you're telling me that both Megumin and Darkness will be out until tomorrow, am I wrong? Receiving a nod from the blue-haired girl, Issei decided on a new course of action to take, knowing that he had a full day until he could return to his usual madness. Okay, then I know where I'm going. The Kuoh. Wait, Issei-san, where exactly are you going in such a hurry? Asked the blue-haired girl in view of the sudden change in the brown-haired boy's attitude, who seemed to have already forgotten about the paladin and the mage in his group. Wait, don't leave me behind. In this way, Issei, followed closely by a Kuoh, headed to the Adventurers Guild to claim the reward for Veldia, which obviously shouldn't be small, considering that they were talking about one of the 8 generals of the Demon King's army. Of course, not without first having to endure Kuoh's constant complaints along the way, who loudly demanded a share of said reward. Needless to say, Issei reproached him for his participation in the fact that Veldia attacked Axel, which was partially his fault. A few minutes later, Adventurers Guild reception. After a few minutes of walking, Issei and Kuoh arrived at the Adventurers Guild where they were received, only Issei, as Axel's saviors. It got to the point that it almost became a party that would have lasted for hours if it weren't for the fact that the brown-haired boy had a couple of objectives in mind for having arrived at the guild. Issei. Hello Luna-san, I came for my reward for Veldia. The brown-haired man spoke calmly to the Luna Guild receptionist, who until a minute ago was doing some guild paperwork, only to get a little nervous in Issei's presence, despite everything maintaining her professionalism when working. Luna. He understood Issei-san, wait a moment while I bring it to you. Shaking a little, Luna immediately headed to the back of the guild to collect the well-deserved reward from Issei's guild, which not only protected Axel, but also defeated one of the 8 generals of the Demon King. A couple of minutes later Luna returned with Issei and Kuoh with a couple of fairly large bags full of Agares, the corresponding reward for having finished off one of the 8 generals of the Demon King. Luna. Well, subtracting the part of the adventurers who came to the defense of the city, the costs of repairing some parts of the wall, which received some damage as a result of your fight against Veldia. Thus continuing to name the individual reductions among the adventurers who participated in the defense of the city of Axel as well as their teammates, the final calculation of Issei's reward had finally ended. Luna. The total that corresponds to you from the reward of the general of the army of the Demon King Veldia the Dullahan is 4,500,000 million Agares in total, and here is the total. In this way, Issei, thanks to Kuoh and Megumin's nonsense, had not only acquired a good fortune, but it also awakened his dormant power. In short, for Issei and his group it was a good day, as well as the beginning of a new legend. After collecting the reward from the Adventurers Guild for Veldia and putting it in a pocket dimension, not wanting to carry so much money on hand, Issei, followed by a greedy Kuoh who longed to get her hands on the chestnut's reward, headed to the guild's notice board in search of something good to do while waiting for their teammates to return. While they examined the missions, which by the way were still very difficult for their group, after all, even though Issei had recovered his power, he still had to train and control it again, which is why he was still weakened. In search of an easy mission to complete until the return of Megumin and Dracus, Issei came across a rather peculiar announcement posted on the guild's notice board. Issei. I'm looking for a group that can accept me as a member and friend. I'm a great magician and very good company. Please, if you're interested, let's be friends. This ad seems desperate no matter how you look at it, but I'm interested in the great magician thing. I'll leave it pending for tomorrow. In this way, after consulting with the receptionist Luna about the peculiar announcement and scheduling an appointment with the person who placed it for the night at the Issei Guild, he went directly to a certain place he had recently discovered where a recent acquaintance of his was waiting for him. A few minutes later, magic shop. Issei. Well, we've finally arrived, the brown-haired girl commented, relieved to have finally reached her destination, still being followed by the blue-haired girl who didn't seem comfortable at all at not knowing what the brown-haired girl was looking for in a magic item store, considering the power she possessed. Now listen carefully, Kuoh, I let you come, but if you dare to do something stupid or cause trouble, I'll hit you with Avalon, is that clear? The Kuoh, who do you think I am? In case you forget, I am a goddess, a deity. It is impossible for me to make a mistake, like making a fuss, you know. Issei. You've been warned, Kuoh, if I hear a single scream from you or that you're causing a fuss with the store owner, I'll knock you out with Avalon, understood? Faced with that threat, Kuoh just nodded, knowing that the brown-haired man was capable of easily carrying out his threats based on his own experience. Okay, then, let's go in at once. And so the duo entered the store that at first glance seemed like a quiet and normal magic item store, and on the other side of the counter was the owner of the same store, who did not hesitate to greet them like any other customer, as well as the reason why Issei went to said place in the first place. Welcome. With a calm and clearly feminine voice she greeted, it was the owner of the store, a beautiful girl with long brown hair reaching almost to her hips and a lock covering her right eye, golden eyes and light skin, and a figure that denoted beauty and maturity. Her clothing consisted of a light purple peasant dress under a dark purple tunic with gold edges, with an accessory in the shape of bat wings and a cross in the center, as well as black boots. The name of this beautiful girl, who could only be defined as a goddess of beauty, was Wiz, a recent acquaintance of Issei, as well as a lick who lived her life quietly in the city of Axel, as the owner of the most famous or infamous magic item store, depending on who you ask. Issei. Hello Wiz, it's been a while since I saw you last, Issei calmly greeted the store owner, but his companion couldn't follow the brown-haired man's example due to the warning he had received just a few seconds ago. The Kuoh. So here you were, damn undead. Kuoh shouted furiously, which scared the brown-haired girl as she clearly recognized the blue-haired girl in front of her. Well, I have to sleep in the stables, you have your comfortable tent in the city, but that's over. In the name of the Axis Order, I'm going to reduce this place to ashes. This time, don't escape from it. Kuoh. suddenly interrupted by a strong blow to the head. Kuoh curled up on the ground, holding a huge bump caused by Issei using Avalon, as if he were a baseball bat to hit Kuoh with a single blow, just as the brown-haired boy had warned. Issei. I'm sorry about that, Wiz. Even though I had already given this idiot a clear warning, it seems she ignored me, the brown-haired boy apologized calmly, while bowing his head before the brown-haired girl, who insisted that apologies were unnecessary on this occasion. Wiz. And don't worry Issei-san, apologies are unnecessary, said Wiz, somewhat upset by the scare Kuoh caused him as well as Issei's apologies. After all, nothing happened. But you're probably wondering where the hell Wiz and Issei know each other from. Issei thoughts. I still remember when we met Wiz, it goes back a couple of days before the second invasion of Veldia to Axel, specifically at night in the city cemetery, after we were forced to accept a guild investigation mission in the Axel cemetery. To keep the story short, Issei and his team went into the cemetery and found Wiz, who, through a purification ritual that she performed every night, purified the spirits of the dead who had not been able to find eternal rest until the intervention of a certain 5th-grade goddess. After Kuoh's intervention in Wiz's purification ritual, it ended up being ruined, which made Wiz herself unable to continue performing it, and since Kuoh was directly responsible, she was designated to perform the ritual herself as a punishment. Of course, that only caused Kuoh to curse poor Wiz for hours, who was just another victim of an unfortunate accident caused by the self-proclaimed goddess Kuoh, who swore to make Wiz pay at all costs, even though the poor brown-haired girl was not to blame for anything. After that, and Issei leaving a very clear warning to Kuoh about what would happen to him if he made a scene again, the brown-haired boy was finally able to go to the reason that brought him to that store in the first place. Wiz. Well, now if I could ask, why did Issei-san and Kuoh-sama come here? Wiz spoke timidly when referring to Kuoh, knowing the character that the blue-haired girl had as well as her religion, and why they are all known. Of course, if it is something too complex then it doesn't matter. Issei. Calm down already Wiz, at this rate you'll have a nervous breakdown, Issei calmly commented, seeing how the poor brown-haired girl was about to have an attack despite being undead, and regarding what we came here to do, it's to ask you a favor, Wiz. Wiz. A favor? Okay, I'll do what I can to help, but what kind of favor could it be? Wiz asked, confused, not understanding what Axel's most powerful adventurer could want from her, being only the owner of a small magic item shop, and to make matters worse, she was just one step away from bankruptcy. All of this, incidentally, is due to the defective and potentially fatal products that the shop owner stocks. Issei. Well, what happens is I wanted to see if you could teach me some of your skills. After all, I'm sure you have one that's good enough and useful for me, commented the brown-haired boy, who revealed his objective for having gone to Wiz's store. Kuoh. What the hell is wrong with you? How could you even think of trying to learn something from this damn thing? I'm not going to die. Do you have any idea how much it will tarnish my reputation if you learn even one skill from her? Issei. Considering that you already have the nickname Archpriest of Vomiting, I doubt this will affect you too much, Issei commented forcefully, to an Kuoh who, after hearing the nickname she had, just started to cry, having not been aware of it until now. Wiz. By the way, even though I found out a few weeks ago, I forgot to congratulate you for having defeated Veldia. Congratulations to both of you, Wiz spoke in a lively tone, which looked truly happy for the victory of the Issei group over one of the 8 generals of the Demon King. That would be a normal reaction for anyone else if it weren't for the fact that Wiz, to Issei's knowledge, wasn't human. In fact, he knew very well that Wiz, with the power she possessed according to his senses, was at least 4 times that of Veldia, which only meant 2 things. Either Wiz was a former adventurer who, upon dying, was miraculously able to revive in the form of an undead being to take revenge on her murderer, or she tried to confront the Demon King, something bad happened, and she was turned into an undead being, and in the process, one of the Demon King's 8 generals. Judging by Wiz's previous reaction, Issei was more or less inclined to believe the second option. Issei. Interesting reaction of yours Wiz, Issei commented calmly before the gaze of a confused Wiz and Kuoh, who was still drinking the tea that Wiz had served her. After all, aren't you and Veldia supposed to be general companions of the Demon King? Wiz. How did you find out? The undead asked, very confused at the fact that she had been discovered so easily, despite having been hiding almost perfectly in Axel without raising anyone's suspicions. Issei. Simple your power, the brown-haired man commented calmly to Wiz's question, which only confused him even more. You see Wiz, unlike what you think, you practically don't hide your power at all, and despite the fact that Axel is a city for beginners, an adventurer of a certain rank or with sufficiently developed senses like me is capable of feeling your enormous power several meters away. The brown-haired boy lied somewhat subtly because until Drake and Albion told him about Wiz's power and forced him to concentrate, Issei was not able to discover the monstrous power of the brown-haired boy in front of him, but that was not something that should be known, so to protect his pride, he decided to take that secret to the grave. Wiz. I didn't consider that, Wiz commented depressed upon seeing that due to her carelessness, she had been discovered so easily unaware of the lie of the brown-haired man sitting in front of her. It's like you said, Issei-san, I am one of the 8 generals of the Demon King Wiz, the Queen Lick. Completing his presentation, Wiz waited for the duo's reactions. He didn't expect a big reaction from Issei, after all, he was the one who caught her in the first place. The one he expected some violent reaction from was Kuoh, the archpriest and his natural enemy. Well, unlike Issei, Kuoh, above adventurer and archpriest, was part of the Axis cult, a cult known for its worship of the water goddess Kuoh, who coincidentally shared the same name, as well as its madness, which was rumored to be insane, which is why it was always recommended to stay away from any member of the Axis cult. Issei. If you wait for Kuoh to attack you, you're wasting your time, Wiz, the brown-haired boy commented calmly, to which the Lick timidly opened her eyes to witness a scene that was at least bizarre in front of her. In front of Wiz was Issei, who, anticipating Kuoh's uproar, tied her up and gagged her, sitting on her back to prevent her from moving, while the blue-haired girl, with a look that promised death, just looked at Wiz as if she were a predator to its prey, which scared the poor brunette a lot, who just trembled in fear at Kuoh's gaze. After a few minutes of struggling, Wiz clarifying that there was no bounty on his head and a few strong threats from Issei to his teammate, Issei was finally able to return to the main topic of why he was at Wiz's shop. Issei. Well, as I was saying before, Wiz, I need you to teach me some of your abilities, the brown-haired man said calmly, looking at the Lick who was keeping a bit away from Kuoh for fear that she would jump on her to kill her, just for the fun of it. I beg you, I seriously need your help. Wiz. I understand that it's to increase your repertoire of skills, but why are you asking me for help? I'm sure there are adventurers with better skills for you, the girl commented, still scared that Kuoh decided to purify her and this time Issei wouldn't be able to save her. Issei. Maybe it's like you say, Wiz, but when it comes to combat skills, I'm more than covered. What I need are complementary skills that are useful for any case, like yours. Issei knew very well that a normal Lick already possessed abilities capable of putting any group of adventurers in trouble, and not to mention Wiz who was the queen of the Licks, which meant that even if it was a weak ability, it would be very useful in the near future. Wiz. Okay, I'll teach you one of my skills without insisting, the brown-haired girl timidly said to Issei, who was quite excited to be able to learn a skill from Wiz, but unfortunately all my skills require a target and unless you want to be that target, I'm afraid I won't be able to teach you. Certainly a disadvantage for Issei was the fact that if he wanted to learn a skill from Wiz, he needed a target to use it on. Luckily for Issei, he knew very well the right person to serve as a guinea pig, and in the process he earned his redemption for having almost attacked Wiz before. Issei. I see, very well, here you will be the guinea pig this time, I calmly commented to a blue-haired girl who after Issei's declaration was more than indignant at having to be the target of a Lick's abilities, and I remind you that you do not have the right to refuse, after all you already made me angry twice today, and I don't think you want to find out what will happen to you the third time, or do you? That tone used by Issei caused a chill in poor Kuoh, who knew very well that if she refused to serve as a guinea pig, she would pay very, very dearly, and being honest, she did not want to feel his fury anymore, now that the brown-haired boy had recovered a good part of his power. The Kuoh. Be fine, I will allow this Lick to use her abilities on me, but if she does anything permanent I will purify her on the spot, with a threatening tone Kuoh warned Wiz, who knew well that Kuoh was not joking, after all she was more than capable of doing something like that. After that, Wiz explained the ability he would teach Issei called Drain Touch, an ability that specialized in stealing and absorbing magical power from its victims, something that Issei did not hesitate to compare to the power of dividing, with the difference of requiring physical contact at all times, as well as the fact that unlike dividing, the user of Drain Touch kept 100% of the stolen energy. The process that Wiz used was just a touch and stealing a little of Kuoh's power, which at first was tempted to purify the poor Wiz, but knowing what Issei could do to her if she made him angry again, she decided not to do it and stay calm. After learning Drain Touch, Issei set out to go to the guild to look for a mission to kill time until the return of his companions, as well as look for a house for sale in Axel, because both Issei and Kuoh were more than fed up with sleeping in the stables where, due to the cold that was beginning to get because of the increasingly approaching winter, it was slowly turning into an icy tomb. That was the plan, but without warning, a man who was strange to Issei and Kuoh entered the store looking for the Lick, who barely heard that they were looking for her and immediately went to assist the man. It turns out that the man was a nobleman from Axel who had acquired a mansion some time ago, which unfortunately he couldn't occupy entirely because it was haunted, and since Wiz was well known in Axel for her particular abilities, it was the reason why she was normally requested for anything that involved evil spirits and exorcisms. The job only consisted of exorcising the evil spirits that roamed the mansion. The reward was said mansion as a permanent home, something that curiously helped Issei and Kuoh a lot. That was in fact a stroke of luck, since Wiz decided that declining said job was the best thing to do, knowing the living conditions of Issei and Kuoh, who were extremely grateful to the brown-haired girl for her kindness, although of course Kuoh did so reluctantly. After that and the Issei team took on the mission of purifying the evil spirits from that noble's mansion. Both the brown-haired boy and the blue-haired girl headed to the guild in search of some work to kill time. This was with the aim of waiting for his date that night with the person who had posted that somewhat desperate ad on the bulletin board, hoping to find a good decent level magician to add to the group, although Issei only hoped to be able to teach that person dream magic as well as Megumin infinity magic. Of course, both Issei and Kuoh had no idea that interview would in fact be the beginning of the greatest magical duo the world has ever known. Time skip Axel Guild 5:30 p.m. Since Issei and Kuoh arrived at the Adventurers Guild, several hours had passed waiting for the person with whom they would have a recruitment interview. The brown-haired and blue-haired girl's original plan was to look for a quick job to earn some money while waiting for the person they would interview. Unfortunately, all the jobs posted on the bulletin board were of high difficulty and required the entire Issei team to be present, which resulted in the two of them waiting patiently in the guild until the agreed time. Of course, not everything was a waste of time, at least for Issei, who during the hours that I hope he dedicated himself to a small experiment that he had previously discussed with Dreg and Albion regarding the evil pieces. Flashback mind of Issei during training. While Issei was still training in his mind to be able to master his new powers as much as possible, while training the balance breaker armor, he wondered why he no longer had access to his characteristic Terraina, as well as the Cardinal Crimson promotion, something that both Dreg and Albion answered in a simple and direct way. Dreg, in case you forget, my friend, this whole journey of yours to this new world began with your death. Following the words of his friend Issei, he had to accept that fact because it was true that it was his death that started his journey through that world full of typical isekai things, but I think we can figure out a way for you to recover your Trihexa and the Cardinal Crimson promotion. Issei. Exactly how? After all, do I remind you that those two transformations came from my evil pieces? Or did you forget? Dreg, I didn't do it, buddy, but you're not understanding me either. You know, after all, there is a method for you to recover both your Cardinal Crimson promotion and the Trihexa. That actually caught Issei's attention when he learned that he could recover one of his most powerful transformations. The method will be simple, buddy, create a new set of evil pieces. Issei. Not that I'm criticizing you or anything, Dreg, but is creating evil pieces even possible? After all, it's one of Ajuka-sama's master creations, and unless they have the plans, I doubt we can replicate them. Dreg. It would certainly be impossible as you say without the plans for the original evil pieces, but I remind you that you carried 8 of those same evil pieces for almost a whole year, or have you already forgotten, partner? Issei had clearly forgotten, and they couldn't blame him after all. In those moments when he was facing death itself head-on, the fact that he was thinking about his 8 pawns was something simply absurd to do. Issei. Okay, I get the hint, Dreg, but how the hell did you get the evil pieces blueprints? Because I doubt someone like you, who mostly sleeps inside boosted gear, would study the evil pieces. And that was true after all, both Dreg and Albion, since they were sealed in the boosted gear and dividing respectively, had almost nothing to do beyond sleeping and rarely talking to their wearers, advising them or simply warning them of certain dangers. But in the generation of Vali and Issei that changed, after all the 2 celestial dragons, since he has the 2 boys who seem unstoppable above all as their carriers, they have had almost no time to sleep, but even so. Dreg. And I have to agree with you there, my friend, I wasn't the one who stored the plans for the evil pieces, the boosted gear took care of that. That was new information for Issei, knowing that the boosted gear could actually store things like that, of course, excluding Excalibur and Ascalon, which he himself had put in the gauntlet. Therefore, I can tell you with confidence that it is possible to recover both your Trihexa and the Cardinal Crimson promotion, but there is a problem. There were always problems, that was something very typical for Issei. Issei. And the problem would be? Dreg. The problem is that this time you will not be able to occupy your old pawn position again, since you currently do not have a king to serve. That was obvious even to Issei, who questioned if his partner and friend was making fun of him by mentioning something so obvious. Therefore you will have to be the one to occupy the vacant position of king. Issei. That was something too obvious, Drag, and you know it more than enough, was the response said by Issei in a somewhat cold tone, due to the mockery of his friend. So can we modify the king piece to recover the Trihexa and the Cardinal Crimson or not? Drag. In fact, that would be the easy part of the process, partner. After all, the king piece, unlike the other 15 evil pieces, is special. That in fact caught Issei's attention when he heard about the characteristics of the king piece. It seems that this piece, unlike the others, grants certain benefits to its bearer, depending on how many servants he has under his power, as well as the power of said servants. Issei. So you're telling me that instead of receiving the power increase, I can make the king piece keep the characteristics of the other pieces, and in that way recover the Trihexa and the Cardinal Crimson promotion, right? Drag, I see you understand quickly, my friend. Speaking calmly, Drag answered his friend's question. Okay, my friend, I'll take care of the internal design of the pieces. You just concentrate on. Then flashback. In this way and as a means to recover another part of their power, Issei and Drag with the help of Albion, began the construction of the new Issei pieces, which at the request of Drag and Albion, were renamed the Dragon pieces. Of course, it was easy to say and very difficult to do. It turns out that the extremely complex structure of the new dragon pieces was difficult to recreate in a container the size of a chess piece, which is why it took Ajuka Beelzebub more than 300 years to perfect the creation process. Of course that didn't stop Issei, Drag and Albion, it may have taken them some time to achieve it, but eventually they would manage to create the first of the 16 dragon pieces, as well as the central one. That was what Issei was still working on at the guild table, forming and perfecting the first of his dragon pieces. After all, Issei knew very well that he would soon face the remaining generals of the Demon King, and if as Beldia said the majority were stronger than him, Issei needed his Trihexa, as well as his Cardinal Crimson promotion soon, or else he would have a very, very bad time. Of course, all of that was interrupted when a Kuoh told him that someone was heading to his table. Issei immediately guessed who it could be. After all, the agreed time had arrived. It was time to meet his future teammate. As soon as Issei looked up to see his teammate, there was a kind of very intense déjà vu feeling. In front of Issei and a Kuoh was a girl with dark brown hair that reached below her shoulders, tied in 2 twin ponytails in front with red ribbons, her eyes as red as 2 rubies, and a calm and somewhat shy look. Her outfit consists of a white shirt collar, a black suit with puffed shoulders that leaves a neckline, a pink pleated skirt and a belt, pink stockings and brown boots, and at her waist, she seemed to have a magic wand smaller than Megumin's. For Issei, despite the fact that the girl was genuinely beautiful, there was somehow a kind of feeling of familiarity about her, almost as if he already knew someone similar to her, and Issei could immediately identify that feeling. He already had in his mind a reason why the girl in front of him was vaguely familiar to him. Issei, mind. She has something to do with Megumin. That was the conclusion Issei came to. He didn't know what the relationship could be between the girl in front of him and Megumin, but it was undeniable that at least the two of them are from the same place, the village of the Crimson Demons. Edo, are you Issei Hyoudou-san? With a tone of voice that demarcated the shyness of the girl, she asked a person in front of her if he was Issei Hyoudou, a stupid question to ask. You have been in Axel for at least more than 1 month, but quite coherent if you arrived relatively recently, which seemed to be the case of the girl in front of Issei. He could tell at a glance that, at least the girl in front of him was a newcomer. Issei. In fact, I am Issei Hyoudou, and the one next to me preparing to get drunk until she faints is a Kuoh, a member of my group. I suppose you are the person who posted the group search notification on the bulletin board, right? With a calm and relaxed voice, Issei decided to introduce herself to him, already a Kuoh, which by the way protested about how she was presented, to which the brown-haired boy next to her sent her a look that said, am I wrong? To which a Kuoh decided, for the first time since she arrived, wisely to remain silent because she herself knew that, this time, she had no way to defend herself. If I am the one who posted the announcement, allow me to introduce myself. After confirming Issei's words, the girl decided that, at least for the person who decided to listen to her strange request, she should at least introduce herself properly. My name is Union. I am the daughter of the current boss of the Crimson Demons, in addition to being a skilled user of advanced magic. For that reason, and if it is not too much trouble, I would like you to accept me into your group. Said with a tone of voice, although low, quite firm. This demonstrated the determination of the girl, now named Union, possessed to join Issei's group, although the brown-haired boy could realize, behind that determination, there was a clear hint of desperation. Issei could not even imagine how many times she had been rejected, but that is why he had to be careful. After all, there were only a few reasons for such a level of rejection, almost all of these reasons being quite bad. Issei only hoped that Union was not the same as Megumin, rather he was praying that that was not the reason behind so many rejections. Issei. I see, well Union-san, although I personally have no problem accepting you into our group, first I need you to describe to me in detail your entire repertoire of magic and abilities, then I can make the decision. Does that seem okay to you? With a relatively serious tone, Issei explained the conditions for Union's acceptance into his group. This was for 3 specific purposes. The first was to make sure that the girl in front of him was not another magician obsessed with a single spell. He could not afford a second Megumin in his group. The second purpose was to confirm Union's capabilities, both her skills and her statistics, as well as what magic she could use and what role she would play in the group. And the third and final objective was to confirm if Union was capable of using sleep magic. Issei's main objective in hiring another magician was in fact that, for that reason this time he had to be especially demanding with his possible new partner, Megumin, from what he saw in her guild card met the requirements to use infinity magic. For that reason Issei had to see if Union could meet the high requirements to use dream magic. For that reason this time he would be strict as much as possible. In the following minutes, Issei dedicated himself to interviewing Union. Said interview was about basic things: Union's level, how many magic she managed to master, her mission history, which curiously was quite good. Apparently she had worked as an adventurer for a couple of weeks, and at the end of said interview, Issei asked to review Union's card, this in order to see her total statistics. Once Union gave Issei her card, he was surprised by what he saw. Although Union's physical stats were average at best, something obvious, considering that she was a mage, her wisdom, intelligence and mana stats were insane. In fact Issei could say that between Union and Megumin, there was barely any kind of difference in power. Only Megumin couldn't keep up with the amount of mana that her explosion spell demanded, a problem that would soon be fixed. Issei, after seeing Union's capabilities, felt confused and delighted, confused by the fact that such a powerful magician was not in the royal capital or in some elite group, and delighted to be able to include Union in his group before anyone else. As for what his other group mates would think, Issei could say that there wouldn't be many problems with Union's inclusion. He could actually tell her reactions to the new addition to the group. First of all, he was sure that she wouldn't mind Union's inclusion in the group. The truth is that it would take a few bottles of good liquor to please her, but if he only had to spend a few thousand Ares to incorporate Union into the group, then he wouldn't hesitate to do it. As for darkness, it was even easier. Despite being a perverted and masochistic paladin, Issei seriously doubted that she would oppose Union's inclusion. She might express some opinion about her, but Issei was sure that darkness would accept Union once she saw her capabilities. The real problem was Megumin. Issei had not the slightest doubt that she would firmly oppose the inclusion of Union to the group, something logical in a certain sense, considering that, traditionally, teams usually have only one magician. In addition to Megumin's possible fear of being replaced with Union, Issei felt that he should prepare his words very well when speaking with her, but he was sure that he could make it work, somehow, maybe. Issei, well Union-san, I can say that I am very satisfied with your abilities. Not only do you have a good command of advanced magi, but you can also use a wide variety of spells, and for that reason I would be more than happy to recruit you into our group. Those words, as strange as it may seem to Issei, seemed to bring Union's excitement to levels that, if he was completely honest, Issei had never seen in his life. Which, again, set off Issei's alarms about Union. But before including you in our group, I have a question that I would like you to answer, Union-san. Union P, ask whatever you want to say, san. I assure you I'll be 100% honest. In Union's voice, there didn't seem to be the slightest hint of hesitation, which showed 2 things. 1, she was genuinely excited to belong to their group, and 2, she was very innocent. After all, the phrase I assure you I'll be 100% honest implied that, as long as Issei asks the question, she could even ask Union's 3 measurements, which Issei wouldn't do, but it was still proof of Union's naivety. Issei. Don't worry, the question is easy to answer. Calmly and a little seriously, Issei expressed his doubt to Union. What I wanted to know, Union.san, is, despite how overqualified you are, why haven't you been part of a group until now? A valid question to ask. After all, in Union's announcement, you could notice the desperation of being included in a group, something quite illogical for Issei who, seeing Union's capabilities, should at least have several groups fighting over her. At that question, Union froze. She could have answered any other question with ease. What is her favorite food, her birthday, something about her parents, even obscene questions like her 3 measurements, or if she was a virgin or not. She is. Even if the leader of the Issei group asked her if she wanted to go out with him, she might have answered affirmatively, even without knowing him more than by name, as well as the comments from Axel's people. Any other question except that were easy to answer. But she had promised to be 100% honest, so even with the fear of being rejected again, she mustered the courage of a lifetime and answered Issei's question. Union L, what happens is that, since she was very young, she was always alone. That answer really confused Issei. Was Union an outcast? Issei was actually expecting any other type of answer, and when she said anyone, she meant anyone, but he never imagined that Union was an outcast. Issei. And I see, so I suppose you had few friends in your childhood, right? At Issei's question, Union shuddered in her seat. And don't tell me you didn't have a single friend in your childhood. Union L. What happens is that, in that way, for a whole hour Union told her story to Issei and Kuoh, how she from childhood to the present, never, ever really had a friend. From her point of view, that story was the only thing that Issei never expected in his life to hear as Union's answer to his question. Now he regretted having asked Union that. As for Kuoh, she came to feel bad for Union, but she couldn't do much more than that. After all, she didn't make the decisions in the group. To her personal frustration, the best she could do was support Union's incorporation into the group. Issei. And I see, your story is certainly quite painful, Union-san, and before you ask, the answer is yes, your story does answer my previous doubts. That managed to cheer up Union a little, despite the fact that she exposed her painful past. At least, she had cleared Issei's doubts, which brought her closer to being accepted into a group at last, and gave her the opportunity to finally have friends. And regarding your request to join our group, for my part, I am not opposed to you joining us. What do you say, Kuoh? Kuoh. No problem for me, as long as it doesn't affect my lifestyle. That response from Issei and Kuoh, even with the blue-haired girl's indifference towards her, managed to cheer up Union a lot. She knew that Issei's group was 4 members, and now had the support of 2. As long as she got the approval of 1 more of its members, she would be accepted. But having obtained the approval of the group leader, Union felt that the most difficult had passed. Issei. Well, as you may know, Union-san, our group is made up of 4 members, me acting as the leader, Kuoh as the archpriest, as well as a paladin and an archmage. This was the composition of Issei's group, something that was already public knowledge, and of which Union was already aware. Now, normally in groups, it is customary to have only 1 magician. Only 1 magician per group, something quite common in the world. Of course there were exceptions to the rule, but generally this only occurred in very special situations, and it was that knowledge, that common rule in adventurer groups, which discouraged Union a lot. She could practically predict Issei's next words, while she, with her head down, prepared to be rejected again. Or at least that's what she thought. Issei. However, that phrase, almost like a ray of light in a vast and almost infinite darkness, managed to reach Union, giving her back a little hope. Due to certain special circumstances, I find myself in need of recruiting another magician to our group, and luckily for me you appeared, Union-san. For that reason, and as long as you don't mind, I hope you can join our group. After Issei said that phrase, he prepared for Union's reaction. He expected her to be euphoric about being admitted into the group, considering her dark past. But even after a minute of waiting Issei, he didn't receive any response from Union. This in fact began to worry him a little. It's not that he thought Union would reject him, after all, she looked very excited about the possibility of joining his group. That's why Issei raised his gaze to look Union in the eyes. And when he saw her head on, he discovered the reason for her lack of reaction. The reason why Union wasn't responding. She was completely lost in her thoughts, possibly trying to process the fact that, for the first time in possibly many years, she had been included. That reaction practically told Issei how much that girl had been rejected, ignored and marginalized, something that he wouldn't allow. From that day on, Union would be part of his group, and as a leader, she would never abandon her companions. It took Union a total of 10 whole minutes to finally react, a bit exaggerated in Issei's opinion, but he wasn't one to judge the girl in front of him. After all, he didn't know what she had been through. Union's first action after finally reacting was to apologize for leaving Issei hanging with her answer. The second was to thank him for the invitation, and finally accepted with a look that practically radiated joy. In this way, the Issei team had recruited its 5th member, and with said recruitment, even more problems would come to Hyoudou Issei's already hectic life, without him knowing that the problems that were coming were even worse than he could ever imagine. Scene change. Dimensional gap. In the infinite confines of the dimensional gap, in that endless space, a dark portal opened. Without the guardian of the dimensional gap, it was now possible to travel through it safely, to use it as a means of travel between universes. And that was exactly what the being who opened the portal was doing. Traveling between universes. From that dark portal a figure came out. It was not something even minimally natural. Its body was quite tall. This being was 2 meters tall. Its figure was humanoid, but its appearance was not. On its face you could see inside its helmet a total of 6 eyes, which shone with a cruel and violent light, a demonstration of both the power and cruelty of that being. Dressed in golden armor that, at first glance, was very resistant, almost seemed to be made of solid gold, exuding a kind of aura of magnificence, which, if it weren't for the extremely compressed aura of violence and devastation that the being exuded, could seem almost glorious. Behind his back was a cape almost as dark as night itself. I finally reached the sector. It took longer than I expected. Now all that remains is to find the guardian and eliminate him, that way we can continue with the preparations for the invasion. But the voice that demonstrated not only power, but also cruelty and limitless violence, that being that could only be described as a monster, expressed his objective. To eliminate a certain guardian. And he's not here. Curious, the report said he should be around here. Well, it doesn't matter, I just have to start the search. No matter where he's hiding, his destiny is to die at my hands. I am the Invisible Devastator, I am Eevee's axe, I am Reglaziva, the Supreme General of the Devastator Order, and I swear by that name that nothing will be left in my path. But the voice that only showed absolute cruelty, the being now identified as Reglaziva, spoke. His intentions could not be said, but one thing was certain. This was only the beginning of something much bigger. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.